Welcome. I am your host, Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on Twitter at MMA LOTN. Joining me as always, we got my guy Cody Saftik. You guys can find him at CJ Saftik on Twitter, and we are here propping you up for UFC 258, headlined by Kamaru Usman and Gilbert Burns for that prestigious 170-pound welterweight title, held once by our great Canadian hope, George St. Pierre. But now it's Kamaru Usman that's trying to tackle that 170-pound legacy of George St. Pierre. Cody, we had one event last week. We're in the midst of 8 straight weeks of events. We got the second pay-per-view within a 3-week stretch. How are you feeling, buddy?
I don't know if I would consider this a pay-per-view other than the fact that you have to pay for it if you intend to view. Yeah, definitely a week off from the UFC, but they got such a long stretch of events that is what it is. At least we got a cool headlining fight between Kamaru Usman and Gilbert Burns at the top, but it really does fall off after that. So the best way to make a meh card really exciting is to hit some sweet props. 2 weeks ago, it was all about those inside the distance, right? You had Marina Rodriguez with that second round finish, 11-1. We had Michael Chandler with inside the distance, or it was by KO, plus 650. And then last week, dialing it back, Lara Procopio by decision, Beneil Dariush by decision. It's all about the decision. So, yeah, I mean, we'll try to take the lean wherever we can get it and try to hit some good plus money plays. And, yeah, again, it was a really solid parlays were affected by Mike Rodriguez. But as far as the prop side of things goes, it was a nearly perfect shutout. So hopefully we can keep some of that momentum going into this week.
Yeah, you went 2-0 on your props. You had that third one.
Yeah.
That third one
for two, but I got it.
But that's just the day and age that we live in now, right? With COVID, we don't know. I usually drop my podcast on Mondays. By the time it's fight time, it's like a completely different card. So that's just the times that we're in right now. It is a real bummer that we did lose the Jimmy Rivera and Pedro Munoz rematch. That was probably the fight that I was looking forward to the most on the entire card, even more than Usman and Burns. But we still have some fights to go through. And if you are a true diehard, there's a lot of good fights on here, at least on paper. Hopefully they're able to play out that way in the cage as well too. All right, as we always kick this off, I always want to remind you guys, hit that like and subscribe below. It's a solid way to show you guys some support as well as the odds channel. And it just keeps us coming back on a weekly basis. And we love doing this for you guys. We usually hit like that 250 to 300 live viewer mark. And it's a hoot, definitely in the chat. So I'm always happy to see you guys in there as well too. If you guys have any questions throughout the podcast, please do drop them. As we're talking about a specific matchup, we're more than happy to bring up anything that you guys want to talk about. But we do want to get through this in a timely manner as well too. Speaking of timely manner, let's get right into it. Let's get into the first fight that we got of the night is Julian Robertson versus Miranda Maverick, two youngins in the, I believe, strawweight division, minus 135 for Miranda Maverick, plus 115 for Julian Robertson. The angle that I'm taking here is the under 2.5, and that's the angle that I always go with in Julian Robertson fights. Obviously, the last two fights, and it hasn't really played out. One of them, I got to blame Polyana Pitolo in terms of just not wanting to get up and not giving us any of those openings. And then obviously the Tyler Santos fight, just absolutely manhandling Julian Robertson, not really to the point of looking for a finish, but still to the point of being very, very dominant. Now here with Miranda Maverick, we got a 23-year-old who, in my opinion, has a very bright future, very strong fighter herself physically, and even her Muay Thai game is very, very nasty, which is on full effect in her last fight against Liana Jojua, where she just landed this beautiful up elbow, landing straight on dead smack on the nose of Liana Jojua, and it just would not stop bleeding the entire time. To be honest, that fight probably could have kept going on just because of the placement of the cut, but it is what it is. Miranda Maverick gets a stoppage victory in her first UFC fight. I think the girl has a bright future. Now here against Julian Robertson, Robertson probably has the jiu-jitsu advantage, but I do think that the strength of Miranda Maverick will cause her some issues in terms of being able to set up those submissions and get her game going, especially with trying to get this fight to the ground. I think she will get it to the ground, but I don't think she'll be successful in locking any type of submission up. But I think the chance is there. I think the higher chance, though, is Miranda Maverick actually trying to pound this girl's face to the canvas because she has a mean streak about her. And even when this fight is on the feet, we've seen the improvements in her striking game, and I think she's going to cause Robertson fits. So the spot that I'm looking at is the under 2.5. I already have a bet on it around that plus 150 range. But if you want to get even more specific about it, I'm going with the Maverick wins via KO, which is plus 415. I think she gets a ground and pound finish or even just catches her on the feet and then follows up with some strikes. How are you seeing this one, Cody?
I see the train of thought for sure. With Julian Robertson, she is a lot of the times a fast finisher. She'll go out there. If she does get the fight to the ground, she does have good grappling. She does have good submissions. And she's super eager to get the submission. She's not looking to hold position. She's not looking to control her opponent. She's looking to just advance and lock something up as quick as possible. Defensively, she's always throwing up arm bars when she's on her back. Same thing with the Taylor Santos fight. She's getting dominated physically, but she's just attempting to finish at all times. It's to her detriment. She loses the fight. So on one hand, at least you know Julian Robertson's fighting for your under 2.5. On the other side with Miranda Maverick, she is fighting for your under 2.5. The Joshua fight, I mean, yeah, Lilian Joshua is super low level, but you see Miranda Maverick, she just walks forward. And is she super hittable? Yeah, Joshua's nailing her with a couple decent punches. But Maverick is just young. She's 23. She's aggressive. She's hungry. Takedown defense is not that good. Her striking defense is not that good. But she's one of these fighters similar to, in ways, like Carol Rosa. Carol Rosa is very hittable. She never moves her head. But she's so aggressive and strong that she just backs you up, and all of a sudden you have nowhere to go. She's landing on you. She hurts you. Julian Robertson has been backed up. She has been hurt before. You look at her fight against Maycee Barber, who we're going to talk about later in the show. Barber just backs her up. She's bigger than her. She's stronger than her. She's more aggressive. And she lands like a 45-punch combination where the ref's basically like, I could continue. I could allow you to continue. I'm just not going to. You're not going anywhere. He mercifully stops the fight. It was the same thing with Joshua. It's interesting, right? The cut man looks at the ref and he's like, he's not even working on it. Eh? He's not put Vaseline. He just looks at the ref and is just like, no. And the ref waves it off. She's mad. Joshua's pissed off. Of course. Her corner is totally okay with it. They're just like, like it wasn't going to get any better than this. But again, you see Miranda Maverick, super young, getting better. She fought in the Invicta one-night tournament. They're only one-round fights, but your willingness to fight multiple different opponents in the same night. I mean, it just shows a gameness. Her losses have come early. They were against good level of opposition. There's a lot that you like from Maverick. So I can see 100% this one being the under, where if Maverick has her way, she's going to back her up. She's going to sting her with some strikes. She's going to put her away. And if Julian Robertson manages to pull off the upset, she's going to get her down with the poorest takedown defense of Miranda Maverick, is able to secure a takedown and maybe lock up submission. I just got a gut feeling, it's a women's MMA fight and it'll end up going to decision. And I still got Miranda Maverick winning said decision, but here's the one thing with Julian Robertson. So Robertson was an absolute finishing machine, right? But the level of opposition, I mean, it's fairly, for the most part, pretty low. She beats Emily Whitmire inside the distance. She beats Molly McCann inside the distance. She got beat by Marina Buelo Silva inside the distance. Veronica Macedo Serafrada. None of these girls, I guess, except for Molly McCann, has a job in the UFC, right? It's really, really low level. The Maycee Barber fight, she gets TKO'd. It's the last three I want to talk about. They're the most recent, right? The Courtney Casey fight, it shows inside the distance. It shows that she submitted Courtney Casey in the third round. But man, there's like less than 30 seconds on the clock. Courtney Casey makes a bonehead decision, just trying to get up because she knows she's losing, gives up her back, gives up the rear naked choke. That should have gone the distance. Because of that reason, I was big on Julian Robertson beating Polyana Pitolo by decision. And it's plus 350, right? She goes out there, it's by decision. Then you see the Taylor Santos fight. It's by decision. Now that Julian Robertson has moved up the rankings and is fighting a better level of competition, those submissions aren't sticking, And is she tough enough to take Miranda Maverick's ground and pound? Well, she was tough enough to take out whatever Taylor Santos threw her way. She is still young. She's only 27. She is theoretically making improvements, less improvements than she was making when she was full-time at American Top Team. Now that she's doing her side thing with Dean Thomas, I kind of see her progression as being plateaued. She's kind of capped herself off. But is she tough enough to just last a decision? Like that's possible. So I got Miranda Maverick. I think Maverick straight up because she opened at like 3-1, which is unplayable, but it's moved all the way down now to a very playable line. So you probably just take her straight up. If I was chasing a prop, this is the prop show. If I was chasing a prop, the Maverick by decision was plus 180. And I didn't mind that, but your prop sounds a lot sexier, right? It's plus 410. Yeah. And it's a completely possible scenario that she backs her up, stings her, and causes her to quit. So I'm digging what you're saying. I kind of went with that decision route, but here's a theme. Don't want to ruin it too early, but the viewers always build, so they won't hear it. If you're in early, you'll know this now. Everybody else maybe will hear it later, but I got a lot of decision prop on this show. Like not only is this a low-level card, but a lot of these fights are going to decision. So that's my take on the first fight of the night.
One thing that always sticks out with me with Julian Robertson, after she taps out, I believe it was Serafrada, she goes and talks in that post-fight press conference or the post-fight interview. She's like, I'm a position or a submission over position girl. And that usually is not the best way you want to go about it when you're fighting higher level competition, when you're bailing on solid positions to go for a submission and then you end up on the bottom and you're getting your face punched to the canvas. So maybe that's what ends up happening here if she's not able to snatch up the sub against Miranda Maverick. Very interesting matchup, definitely to start off the card here. All right, let's move on to 2, the next one, we got Gabe Green going up against Phil Rowe. Phil Rowe, man, we haven't seen this guy in a long time. He hasn't even made his UFC debut. He did fight Leon Shabazian on the Contender Series way back in August of 2019. We're approaching a year and a half since he's been off now. Gabe Green, on the other hand, last time we saw him was against Daniel Rodriguez, where he came on relatively short notice and still managed to go the full 15. Basically in a fight that is his secondary option, which is a striking contest. The guy likes his jiu-jitsu. He's very crafty on the ground. I believe he's one of those 10th planet guys out there in California. I could be off on that, but I know he's definitely in that jiu-jitsu realm, and that's his preferred method of fighting. But Phil Rowe is a guy that's going to have like massive amounts of reach and height on him. We're talking about a 5-inch height advantage, a 6.5-inch reach advantage. And then in terms of youth, it's obviously on the Gabe Green side. When I'm watching the tape on Phil Rowe, the guy still seems like he has some quirks about his game. Like he still seems a little bit uncomfortable on the feet, unless he's the one that's actually landing the bombs, getting you shelling up against the cage and then just unloading his bombs. I'm having a very, very tough time in terms of picking what side I'm going to be going with here. I've seen a lot of people on Rowe. I've seen a lot of people on Green. Personally, I'm going to end up siding with Green here, as I feel like he's just a little bit more comfortable in the cage. He's been a little bit more active. I don't mind what I see from his hands. And then obviously his jiu-jitsu is there too. Phil Rowe, on the other hand, we're talking about a guy from Fusion XL training with Jacare Souza. I think Mike Perry used to be there. He's probably gone by now. Rodolfo Vieira, another guy fighting on this card, trains down at that gym as well too. So you got to believe he has some grappling chops, not to mention that he has a numerous amount of wins via submission as well too. But now when you're starting to climb up the ladder and start finding these guys that actually know what the hell they're doing, things get a little bit more difficult. Also, given the inactivity of Phil Rowe, it gives me a little bit of pause to go out there and back him. And obviously him being the plus side here, that's obviously a little bit enticing for anybody that's looking to bet aside here. The spot that I thought is probably the safest. Both guys are violent heavy. Both guys go out there and seek the finish. The under 2.5 is -130, slightly chalky. And even if you want to go a little bit deeper, maybe Green via submission at +415 is probably the way to go. But we've seen the jiu-jitsu side of Phil Rowe's game as well too. This one is just a giant question mark on my end. I'm hoping that you can give me some clarity on this matchup, but I'm going to be going with Gabe Green, and I'd probably say via submission, but I think the safest spot is the under 2.5. How are you seeing it?
Yeah, this fight's a big time pass as far as I'm concerned. I mean, it's probably the lowest level fight on the card, and you should definitely have very low action on it. However, it's the type of pass that I would classify as a dogger pass, and for that reason, I would go with Phil Rowe. Both these guys are extremely middling in their own ways. I mean, they've both had very mixed results so far as professionals. Let's start off with with Gabe Green, right? Gabe Green comes to the UFC, and he's actually fought, and as far as regional scene goes, he's fought decent guys. So he himself also beat Leon Shabazian, but he defeats him in the first round with the TKO. Ivan Castillo, well-traveled veteran. Chris Padilla is 9-2 at the time. Javier Garcia is 3-0. Richard Leroy 7-0. He knocks him out in the second round, and then he takes on D-Rod, and D-Rod's a tough son of a bitch, man.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy's got high-level BJJ himself, doesn't opt to use it all the time. He's got really good technical boxing. His cardio is pretty good for the most part. I know he came up short in his last time, but I mean, he's got a lot of really good skills that you can fall on, that you can like. And it's a tough fight for Gabe Green. I thought he lost all 3 rounds, but he gave a good account of himself in that his durability was there. He got nailed with a bunch of solid punches. And I mean, he stood up to them. He took them. He got easily outlanded, but he kept going. His cardio was good. Durability was good. Heart was good. Pushed all the way through. Okay. But at least he's fought in some decent guys in the regional scene, comes to the UFC, has a tough outing against a tough guy, gives a good account of himself. Philip Roman, you look at his regional scene, 1-1, 0-1, 0-3, 1-2, 4-5, right? And then he beats Leon Shabazian. So the common opponent is Leon Shabazian. But Gabe Green knocks him out in the first round. Philip Rowe, meanwhile, he got beat up bad in the first round against Leon Shabazian. He gets dropped. He's hurt. He gives up a takedown of all things. It's like, good God. And then the second round, it's like, oh, Leon's tired. And Philip Rowe's got good cardio too. He's got good durability as well. So he kind of has some of those similar characteristics in Gabe Green, and that cardio bailed him out against Shabazian, took him out in the third round. Could have finished him at the end of the second, really, but took him out in the third round. Cardio checked out, durability checked out. Okay, so we know that he's got a decent gas tank, decent durability, work in progress. Gabe Green, he's got decent gas tank, decent chin, but he's a work in progress. So it's like, well, which one do you go with? But this is the reason why I kind of classify it as a dogger pass type situation, right? With Gabe Green, at least you look at that Daniel Rodriguez fight. And one thing that it seemed like he really struggled with was Rodriguez's size. So Rodriguez is 6'1" with a 74-inch reach, right? And that compared to the 5'10", 73-inch reach of Gabe Green, he seemed to come up short on the punches. He was getting beat a lot. He just doesn't move his head a ton. It seemed like size kind of gave him a problem. Philip Rowe's 6'3" with an 80-inch reach, right? So he's actually 2 inches taller than Daniel Rodriguez, making him 4 inches taller than his opponent here. And that 80-inch reach gives him a 7-inch reach advantage. And so I think if he just stays to the outside and intercepts Gabe Green coming in, he should be able to hurt him. His cardio checked out good against Leon Shabazian. Year and a half off's not great, but as a young developing fighter who was kind of green to begin with, time off's not the worst thing in the world. We should see a bit of a better version of Philip Rowe. But listen, we're just assuming. We're assuming he's made improvements, and we're assuming he's going to be able to use his 80-inch reach effectively, which who knows if he will or not. He wasn't able against Shabazian. And with Gabe Green never attempted any takedowns against Rodriguez. Rowe obviously attempted no takedowns himself against Shabazian. So both guys seem like they're just going to want to strike. And I don't know that you get a finish. So honestly, it's a pass. But again, where you guys went for that, maybe that Gabe Green submission victory, I like that Philip Rowe by decision was plus 510. Ooh. And the reason why I end up settling with that is it's a 5-1 play first and foremost. But we're dog or pass, and we're going to end up with Rowe. I seen some people in the comment section saying Guru's on Rowe as well. That's a good sign. I haven't checked out Guru's video yet, but I will. He's on Rowe. That's a good sign. But basically, it's like it's a 50-50 fight he could win. But if he does win, he's not submitting Gabe Green, as you mentioned, is the better BJJ than he does. And is he knocking out Gabe Green? Well, here's the funny thing about that. Daniel Rodriguez hit him 147 times significantly and didn't knock him out. So if Rowe, who took 3 rounds to get Shabazian out of there, right? He took him out late in the third. If he doesn't manage to take Gabe Green out and just settles for the victory, settles for that decision victory, it's plus 510. So you probably don't want to bet on this fight. But if you were going to bet on this fight, instead of betting a 50-50 fight with a slight underdog, why not take that plus 510 and just take Rowe by decision?
For sure. This I've been seeing it in the comment section as well too. We've been banging on it. This fight is pretty much a pass, but if you are going to do it, you might as well exploit as much money out of it as you can. So I definitely see your side of things as well here too. All right, let's keep things moving along. Next up, we got a fight that was actually scheduled for a couple weeks ago. We have Ricky Simón against Brian Kelleher. The current line has minus 245 for Simón, plus 205 for Kelleher. But when they were originally scheduled to fight early in January, it was like minus 185 for Ricky Simón and plus 160, plus 150 for Brian Kelleher. And the only thing that's changed in that amount of time is that Ricky Simón went out there and dusted off this UFC newcomer that had no business being in the cage with him. So I don't know how much it should really affect a fight here against Brian Kelleher, who truly is much, much better than Gaetano Perello. Yeah, I think anybody that's banging on Brian Kelleher right now is definitely getting the value side. With that said, I still think Ricky Simón goes out there and wins this fight via decision. The guy goes out there and he could implement a similar game plan to what Cody Stamann was able to do against Brian Kelleher. But I do give Stamann, just as when I was breaking him down a couple weeks ago, I think he's one of the better strikers with the wrestling background. So I don't think that Ricky Simón has as good striking as a Cody Stamann, but I think he has passable striking that he can go out there, mix up the clinch positions, mix up a couple takedowns maybe. But I think the majority of this fight is going to be taking place on the feet. And Brian Kelleher is always dangerous with his knockout power, just as Hunter Azure from a couple months ago, right? But Ricky Simón, I think he's much better. I think his knockout loss to Uriah Faber is one of those anomalies, kind of like Jimmy Rivera getting knocked out by Marlon Moraes. I think those are one of those one of those off days where something crazy ends up happening, right? Obviously, Marlon Moraes is always very live for a knockout, but Jimmy Rivera has historically been a very durable guy. As with Ricky Simón as well, too. I feel like he's been a historically very durable guy. Went 3 full rounds pretty much in the striking realm against Rob Font and held his own. Obviously lost that fight, but still was, didn't get rocked, didn't get dropped, didn't get finished or anything like that. So here in this fight with Brian Kelleher, I think that Kelleher just has that narrow path of victory of possibly clipping him, finishing him. I don't think he's going to be able to outvolume him. I don't think he's going to be able to outpace him. And then obviously I don't think he's going to be able to deal with the strength that we'll see from Simón in those clinch positions. So the spot that I like here the most, you want to get the most bang for your buck on Ricky Simón, obviously minus 245, probably unplayable to a lot of people. So you hunt that Ricky Simón wins by decision at minus 125. This is not Gaetano Perello where you're going to go out there and see him absolutely smash this guy. So that fight lasted 9 minutes. He accrued 7 minutes of control time. That should tell you how one-sided that fight was. Even in DraftKings, that guy scored 3 points, whereas Ricky Simón got 111 or something like that, right? So Simón, very dominant fighter, very dominant wrestler, very strong guy as well too. And with that narrow path to victory for Kelleher in terms of possibly getting a guillotine choke, I think that Simón is just too experienced of a wrestler to fall into something like that. And then obviously the knockout power of Kelleher. Those are 2 paths to victory for Kelleher. I just don't see them coming to fruition. I think the safe side here is Ricky Simon. Again, it would be nice to get plus money considering that this is a prop show, but everybody and their mama knows that Ricky Simon, if he wins this fight, is probably going to be decision. Brian Kelleher is very, very durable. Not often that you see him finished at all. So yeah, I'll go with Simon via decision. Do you agree? Do you disagree? How do you feel?
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%. I think that Simone's should be able to win this fight. He should be able to win this fight again by decision. That's kind of been his path to victory outside of choking out Muradovashvili. What the hell was that? Still to this day, I don't understand. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot that you can like with Ricky Simon in that he's one of these stereotypical Pacific Northwest type fighters. He's grinding, he's got the wrestling, he's got the cardio, he'll just keep pushing a pace on you, but his striking defense has given him problems in the past. You mentioned his durability as being, pretty good. I don't think it's all that good. See, Ricky Simon dominates a lot of guys, right? So he's not getting hit. He just goes out there, he gets the takedown, he grinds them into the ground. They're hitting him off their back maybe, but it's not a problem. But when he lost in Titan FC against Anderson dos Santos, he got mad chin checked, hit the ground, he wobbled, and then he gives up the submission because he's already hurt at that point. But it's like chin kind of, and he's a 4-1 favorite in that spot. The Uriah Faber fight is the same thing. He's a 6-1 favorite against Uriah Faber. He goes out there and he gets chin checked in less than a minute. I think that is the path to victory. With Gaetano Perello, he was a one-dimensional kickboxer from Belgium. He showed 12 knockout victories and 15 pro MMA wins, but he had no takedown defense. And the only thing he landed was a knee up the middle in the second round and then got taken down again. But someone that can keep the fight standing a little bit, he could theoretically find the chin of Ricky Simon. And Brian Kelleher, maybe he's that guy in that he's had way more experience. Like he's fought in, guys like John Lineker, he's fought in Renan Barão. He's got a lot of class in the UFC. He's got that guillotine choke, which Ricky Simon loves to shoot, specifically single legs and double leg takedowns, right? And he likes to jam his head in the side. So Kelleher is live for the guillotine choke, sure. But it's that Kelleher striking. It's that Kelleher, same thing in the Hunter Azure fight, where it's like, yeah, maybe he is taking a shit kicking early, but like he stays in the fight, he's gritty, he's tough, and then he'll wing bombs back on you. So Ricky Simon's really got to make sure that he makes this a grinding type affair. In the Perello fight, they mentioned also that Ricky Simon been at Team Quest in Portland, Oregon forever. Has left Team Quest and ended up Team Oyama in California, right? And his hands I thought against Gaetano Perello, his hands looked way better. He was offensively landing some good punches, but defensively, he would step in the pocket and he'd shell up and move out of the way right away. Like he was anticipating the strike coming back and then with the block and then shoot the takedown. 7 takedown completed. He wasn't getting away from the game plan there. I like it. The one thing I don't like is that this fight, as you mentioned, was booked, right? Kelleher pulls out and Ricky Simon's like, you know what? I want to fight anyways. So they give him Gaetano Perello. Fight's at 135, right? And him versus Kelleher is at 135. This fight rebooked at 145 pounds. And whereas that kind of gives me a little bit of hesitancy, you got Ricky Simon hasn't fought in featherweight in like 4 or 5 years, right? He's a natural bantamweight. He's a short guy. He's effective as a wrestler because he's at bantamweight, very strong, very powerful, has good cardio, grinds you to the ground. Whereas Brian Kelleher's last 3 fights have all been at 145 pounds, right? His big upset over Hunter Azure, he's at 145 pounds. He fought Cody Stamann at 145 pounds, and then he choked out Ray Rodriguez in the first round at 145 pounds. No doubt he wants to come back to 135. I just mean if both guys are going to fight at 45, who's it going to benefit more? Kelleher or Simon? Well, I'd say Kelleher. So I do got Simon winning, but now all of a sudden the wrestling's a little harder, right? Because now I'm taking down a bigger man, right? He's got an extra 10 pounds to work with. It's a little harder taking him down, and it's a little harder holding him down. But as far as the power, Kelleher's not going to lose any power. If anything, at 145, he still cracks. And with Simon, I'm just not fully sold on his chin. So Gaetano Perello didn't have the takedown defense or the submission game to threaten. All he could do is get taken down, work his way back up, get taken down. Kelleher could get taken down, work his way back up, do some damage, do some positive, and then get taken back down. But then work his way back up, do some damage, do some positive. And that it's interesting in that regard. But Simon fights the kind of style that I like, that everybody likes. The Khamzat Chimaev style, the Khabib Nurmagomedov style. Is he those guys? No. But he fights that style, right? He fights that style where he just wants to take you down at all costs. And wrestling has won a lot of fights in the UFC. That kind of style, that kind of game, that kind of, if you got the cardio to back it up, and Simon does, he shouldn't get caught. But just keep in mind, he's lost effectively as a 4-1 favorite and a 6-1 favorite. So in this spot, they give it to you as a 4-1 favorite. Again, not 4-1, 250. It's big enough favorite over Kelleher, but you chase that by decision. You chase it because you can get minus 125. It's a better price tag. The worry with Simon's going to be there for the next 2-3 fights. What if he does get caught? But he's got to prove something. But Kelleher's the kind of guy that when he comes through as the underdog, right? So you can't completely write him off. But I am going to side with you. I am on the same page. We're going to go Simon by decision, but got a little sweat already just thinking about it.
For sure. The Hunter Azure fight really sticks out to me because you have a guy that's kind of similar to Ricky Simon, maybe not as experienced and maybe not as good of a gas tank. And we saw him, have a great first round, then start to fall off in that second round and that pressure of Kelleher catches up to him. I do want to say that Kelleher by sub at plus 635 and Kelleher by KO at plus 805 are solid hedge opportunities as well too. If that's your boat, that's definitely not my kind of way to go about it, but I definitely felt that was necessary to bring up here. All right, let's keep things moving along. A short notice fight here. Not as many short notice fights as last week, but we do have a short notice one here with Andre Ewell and Chris Gutierrez. I believe this fight got booked on either Sunday or Monday. If you guys remember, Andre Ewell was supposed to fight Cody Stamen on the last card. He tested positive for COVID. Even though he tested negative twice after that, it still didn't allow him to fight and be ready for that for the event, given that the UFC has a protocol of like, if you have a positive test, you have to quarantine for a mandatory 10 days. And unfortunately for him, it didn't work out. But luckily for him, here he is fighting another opponent, Chris Gutierrez, who's coming in on short notice. And what do we know about Chris Gutierrez? That guy loves searching for that calf kick, and it's worked out for him in his fight against Vince Morales, probably the best we've ever seen him look inside the UFC. And then he tried searching for it against Cody Durden and had some success with it in the second and third rounds. However, that first round, talk about lack of urgency, my dude. Like the guy, Cody Durden had his back for at least 4 minutes of that fight, or that first round, I should say. And we saw nothing from Chris Gutierrez in terms of trying to get out of the position. Now, he did a good job in terms of not getting choked out, obviously being in a very bad position. But you want to see a little bit more urgency from a guy. And obviously gave up a 10-8 in that round, which ended up giving us a draw once it all came to that judge's decision. Now, with Andre Ewell, great hand speed, always one of the longer guys in the division as well too. I believe he's going to have a 8-inch reach advantage here. He will be an inch shorter than than Chris Gutierrez, but I do think that we'll see the reach really be pronounced, especially given this striking acumen of an Andre Ewell. Very fast hand speed, great combinations, but we do see his activity start to wane later in fights, just as we saw Irwin Rivera in his last fight be very successful with a couple takedowns and closing the distance and landing big shots on Andre in those later rounds, or especially that third round. With Chris Gutierrez here, you got to believe his game plan is still going to be centered around the calf kick. Like, you think he's going to go out there, target that kick, try to hide it behind a couple strikes or something like that. But that first round is going to be very tough for him in terms of if we see Andre Ewell actually start checking those calf kicks. Now, Ewell doesn't strike me as a guy that is proficient in checking leg kick or calf kicks, right? The one fight that I always bring up in these situations when we're talking about guys that target the calf kick is the Rafael Fiziev versus Mark Dhiego fight. Leading up to that fight, we saw Dhiego batter dude's calves and then obviously find a finish. In that fight against Fiziev, we saw Fiziev check the kicks right off the bat, and then Mark Dhiego is like, shit, what do I do? I don't think that's going to be necessarily important here, as I feel like we will see the kick start to catch up to Ewell. We will see him start to slow down. And I do think that we'll see Gutierrez go out there and pretty much outstrike him based strictly off of his calf kicks. But I'm just not the most confident in betting him on a short notice camp here. It's at 140-pound catch weight. There's just too many X factors to be completely 100% confident in Gutierrez. I think he wins. I think there's a high possibility that he could finish this fight late as well, too, depending on how much those calf kicks truly have an effect on Andre Ewell. And again, the guy's long, he's skinny. You know, that calf is just so stretched out. It's easier to damage, in my opinion. And if Ewell truly can't check those or come back with something that will make Gutierrez hesitant in terms of throwing it, I think he's going to be in a lot of trouble here. So I hate banging on the calf kick drum whenever we're talking about Chris Gutierrez, but it's such a glaring advantage that he has whenever he's fighting his opponents. And again, coming from Factory X Muay Thai, you know Mark Montoya and them always have a solid game plan to hide those kicks, to bring it up and make them effective. Unfortunately, as of today, we're recording this on Thursday of fight week, we don't have legitimate our props for this. So we just have the inside the distance. We have the over-unders. The spot that I'm looking at is like Gutierrez inside the distance plus 300 is not the most appealing. Maybe around 3, you know, if his calf kicks start to catch up and we see Andre Ewell slow down just as he normally does, maybe Gutierrez can catch up to him there. But again, we don't have a price on that. I lean Gutierrez, and I do lean inside the distance ever so slightly. How do you feel about this one?
Okay, so I think that you can make a very solid argument for either guy to win the fight, but I think the move is that you take the fight to go the distance, and you take the fight to go the distance at minus 180. So with Andre Ewell, how is Andre Ewell going to get the job done? As you mentioned, he's got a 7-inch reach advantage. Even though he's the shorter man, he's got those long arms. He's got good, crisp boxing. He likes to stay in southpaw, fire the left hand down the middle, very good jab, very opportunistic guy, good volume, right? Is his power there? No. Is his submission game there? No, certainly not. So if Andre Ewell is going to win this fight, How does he win this fight? Okay, well, he's not going to knock out Chris Gutierrez, who's never been knocked out before, does have a cast iron chin. He's not going to submit Chris Gutierrez, who's been submitted one time in his pro career against Rony Barcelos, right? So, yeah, if Andre Ewell wins this fight, Andre Ewell is going to do what he's done to multiple guys, and it'll be similar to the Jonathan Martinez fight. Jonathan Martinez looks like he's doing a lot more than Andre Ewell. A lot of people cried robbery on that fight, but ultimately it's like Ewell's just so long. He stands on the outside and he just chips away at you with the jab, mostly just jabs. Fans at home are like, nothing is significant here, but the judges sitting ringside are like, oh, I'm going with those jabs. So again, if Ewell's going to win this, he's going to win by decision. Flip side to that with Chris Gutierrez. Why is Chris Gutierrez all of a sudden some finishing machine? Because he finished Vince Morales with leg kicks? Okay, let's run it back really quick, right? Virtually his entire career has been decision victories, okay? He's got 67-inch reach. His punches always pull up short. That's why he's kicking so much. His wins in the UFC. Ryan McDonald. Yes, man, Preet. Ryan McDonald by decision. Louis Smolka only needed 3.5 minutes to absolutely end this guy's career and retire him. But Chris Gutierrez needed 3 full rounds to chip away at this guy. Geraldo de Freitas. It's 3 full rounds of him chipping away at this guy, and he wins a split decision. Him versus Vince Morales. Morales looked like he might have hurt his leg, but right away, Morales is just looking at the calf. He's injured. He still almost makes it 2 full rounds on one fucking leg. Dude, his leg compromised right in the first round and still almost made 2 full rounds. And then the Cody Durden fight. It's like Cody Durden has a lot of flaws in his game, for sure. Chris Gutierrez is a big favorite over him. And the first round, he gives up his back. It shouldn't have been a 10-8 round. Let's be real about that. But he gives up his back, and then he just sits there. Just like, I'll just wait for the ref to stand me up. No, motherfucker, the ref's not going to stand you up. He's got your back. This is not a stand-up position. Anyways, he just lets it happen. And because it's like 4.5 minutes of control from the back, the judges are just like, whatever, give him a 10-8. And then you see him work his way back in with some leg kicks. But it's like all he's doing is rinky-dinking out these kicks. He doesn't really compromise Cody Durden. He doesn't really put him in a spot where it's like, oh, Durden's done. Durden's tired. Durden took the fight on like 5 days' notice. So that part was understandable. Chris Gutierrez, again, is a decision guy. Is he a submission guy? No. So he's not going to submit Andre Ewell. And if he beats him, I don't think he's knocking him out. I don't think the leg kicks are enough to put away Andre Ewell. So if he wins, he's going to win by decision. Either side, flip of the coin, it's going to decision. So the minus 180 wasn't the worst price tag on a fight to go the distance. However, because I got to make a pick on one side of it, I don't know. I guess I kind of want to chase the dog a little bit in Andre Ewell. The last thing I'm just going to say on maybe it's just like I think you pass on this fight. But maybe the reason why I think Andre Ewell might have a little bit more success is you look by the numbers, right? So Ewell's a guy that he has that length. He has that. But even though he's getting tired in fights, we talked about, oh man, this guy's getting tired. He still shows good output in fights. He got taken down twice against Anderson dos Santos, but still outstruck him 73-35. Even though he's getting taken down, big number in the 73, right? The fight with Jonathan Martinez, right? He landed 80 significant strikes, right? 80-66, he outstruck Jonathan Martinez in a high-paced fight. And then the last fight with Irwin Rivera, yeah, he did get tired, but he landed 123 significant strikes on Irwin Rivera. So he shows 4 fights in his career that he's landed over 60 significant strikes and has some decent wins along the way. With Chris Gutierrez, this is uniform right across the board, right? He lands 69 against Ryan McDonald, 48 against Geraldo de Freitas, 60 against Vince Morales, although it was a finish, 66 against Cody Durden, even though he took the first round off. So his output just seems like he's just kicking. He's not throwing a ton of hands. And that in a decision victory, he's going to land around that 60, maybe 80 strike range, which would be the high side for him. 80 would be a very high side for him, right? Whereas Andre Ewell can go out and throw 80, 100, 110 significant strikes. And that's the kind of thing that in a close decision might get him another close lean, right? The fight with Irwin Rivera, I don't know why it was a split. I thought it should have been unanimous, but whatever. They're seeing that it was close. The fight with Martinez live, I thought it was a flat robbery, right? But again, rewatching, it's like he's just doing a little bit more. So it just comes down to who are the judges that are sitting there watching it. And because Gutierrez is always going to decision, and this fight's likely going to decision, it's likely going to be a close decision. I'm not really running for like a favorite in this spot. If anything, it would be a pass situation because it's a close competitive fight, but I can see the argument for just taking that dog and making it a dog or pass. But you can see the confidence level on here, not exactly great. I would not fault you if you just enjoyed this one from a viewer perspective instead.
Yeah, we're already 4 fights into this, and to be honest, I feel like we did see a comment earlier in the stream where somebody's like, "There's a lot of meat on this card," and honestly, I'm finding it a little bit harder to find some solid props. Like once you even guys see our three best props, not the most juice or meat on the bone as people are saying. Very very tough one to break down for sure. All right, next up we got a women's strawweight bout between Polyana Viena and Mallory Martin. The stance that I've already taken on this, I've taken the under 2.5 at plus 180. Strictly due to the Polyana Viana side. That girl is very chaotic whenever she fights. You know, not the greatest striking technique. We are seeing slight improvements. Her kicking game is getting a little bit better. She was one of the first people to stop Amanda Hebus on the regional scene, just given her like crazy striking style, landing these overhand bombs. I don't think she'll be that successful in landing them against Mallory Martin. I truly think the success will come on the ground with her possibly snatching up a submission here. Mallory Martin, the majority of her fights are her just grounding her opponents out, right? She's just taking them down, grinding them out, landing some good shots from on top, maybe pulls off a submission, maybe pulls off some ground and pound, depending on her opponent. And we obviously have seen her go to a decision as well, too. I believe it was a total of 68% of their fights combined have hit the under 2.5. And with the current odds, it's a 35% implied odds in terms of whether this fight will hit the under 2.5 or not. So I feel like just based off statistics alone, we are getting a little bit of value here. I think like this also kind of reminds me of situations like Bartosz Fabinski against Andre Muniz or Damian Maia versus Ben Askren. Now, I'm not calling Polyana Viena Damian Maia or anything like that, but I just mean like you got a wrestler fighting a jiu-jitsu artist where you need the advantage of the wrestler plays right into the jiu-jitsu artist's advantage. But I truly think that Mallory Martin could be successful on the feet too if this is where she wants to keep it. I mean, she's going to have a little bit of a reach disadvantage. She has a 4-inch reach disadvantage as well as a 1-inch height disadvantage. But I think she's going to have to rely on her hands a little bit more rather than just playing into the jiu-jitsu game of Polyana Viena. We've seen Viena very offensive off of her back. We've seen her offensive to a fault almost to the Julian Robertson style, where sometimes she's like submission over position, which is why I like that plus 190 on the under 2.5. And I truly think it could be Viena that ends up getting the sub here. So we've seen her complete hip tosses, and she's gotten a takedown every now and then. Not the most proficient takedown artist, obviously, compared to a girl like Mallory Martin, whose significant other is Mr. Deron Wynn himself. So obviously, you know, she's going to have her wrestling ready to go. But I'd be interested to see how Mallory approaches this fight. Is she going to go for the takedowns? Is she going to try to just outstrike her? And even if this fight does turn into a striking matchup, I feel like the reckless approach from Polyana Viena will open either up to getting finished here, which is why I like that plus 190. The spot that I'm looking at the most, though, in terms of a specific prop, is Polyana Viena to win via submission, which is plus 390 currently. I like that spot. I think she's able to pull off the submission, and she's one of the more underdogs I have on this card. However, I still think that she wins by decision, which is why I bet the under 2.5 rather than actually betting her straight up here. So I will go with Polyana. I'm going to take her by submission. How do you see this one going down?
Yeah, I mean, so Polyana Viena is just massively untrustworthy, which would just cause me that even like if I was backing her, it's like, it's got to be a small play at the very most. But with Mallory Martin, you mentioned that Mallory Martin might be able to, keep this fight standing and outstrike her. And like, I got to disagree with that. Only the way that Hannah Cypher's fight went. She got massively rocked by Hannah Cypher's. I mean, she is done in, right? A lesser referee probably steps in and stops the fight, and she's just getting teed off on the striking numbers in that round, like the disparity. It's like, oh my God, she got absolutely tuned. And in the second round, Deron Wynn was like, don't worry, honey, happens to me when I try to strike too. So she shoots the takedown, which is like, this is what you should have been doing the entire time. And as soon as she does get the takedown, it's like, okay, she does have a good ground game. She does have good grappling. But beyond that, it's the wrestling. The wrestling is the key. Like, that's what got her here. That's what should take her beyond that. Deron Wynn's not going to win fights in the UFC at this stage, right? They got to match him up real low. But if he was going to win a fight, and boy, oh boy, I backed him his last time out to get the job done with the decision, because Deron Wynn's got to be smart enough to realize I can't strike. My grappling's not all that good. And even when I do score takedowns, a lot of time they're getting back up. So just stick on them. If you want to win a fight, unfortunately, you don't have the skill set other than wrestling. You need to wrestle. Mallory Martin went in that fight and was like, I'm going to work on my striking a little bit. I'm going to test some things out. It's like, no, you got to get the fight to the ground as quick as possible. With Polyana Viena, it screams, work on your striking. But again, I don't know that I would give her a striking advantage over anybody. The Polyana Viena also got outstruck by Hannah Cyphers for what it's worth, but didn't get beat up to that extent, so to speak. With Mallory Martin, I think the takedown's going to be there literally all day long. It's whether or not she's going to stay out of the armbar from guard. Now, we all like to laugh about armbar and guard. Oh my God. It doesn't happen very often. It's such a low percentage move. And then women's MMA, it's such a high percentage move. And to that extent, Polyana Viena's last fight over Emily Whitmire, it's like, you see her rear its ugly head, but I just want to take it back right from the beginning. So you talk about the regional scene. She beat Amanda Hebus. That's cool. She makes her UFC debut. She submitted Joe Stevenson's wife, Maya Stevenson. You know, that's cool, even though it's a really low-level win. It's just beyond that, right? She's billed as a BJJ champion, a former world champion. She's got a high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Perfect. She takes on JJ Aldrich, right? So that's classic striker versus grappler. But she does manage to take Aldrich down twice. It's when she does take Aldrich down, she's got nothing for her. Aldrich is very easily able to just be like, I don't want to be here anymore and get out. So it's like, okay, top game left something to be desired, but hey, it's JJ Aldrich. She's super tough. She trains with Rose Namajunas. No problem. You give her a pass. Then you get the Hannah Cyphers fight. It's like, okay, so the jiu-jitsu is not really on point in this fight, but you know what? Hannah Cyphers is tough. She's rugged North Carolina girl. Kept the fight standing, roughed me up. It's a split decision. She did lose the fight, by the way. But I mean, I agreed with the decision. It was a split, though. Okay, you move on. It's the Veronica Macedo fight, where you're taking on what is billed as a one-dimensional Taekwondo karate practitioner, striker. You managed to get the fight to the ground, and she armbars you, right? Minute 9 seconds. How did that happen? Shouldn't have happened. And then right when I completely write this girl's BJJ black belt off as a utter fraud, she clearly lied about this or got it from the McDojo. She goes out there, she submits Emily Whitmire in the first round with an armbar. So it's like, okay, yeah, she's not completely useless. Jiu-jitsu is her game. Her striking is not very good. Her wrestling is not very good. You mentioned all of her takedowns. It's like, let's say, judo-style takedowns, but it's all head and arm throws. It's all like stuff that worked in women's MMA, still does work in women's MMA, I guess, but it's like the building blocks of a takedown game. It's a jiu-jitsu takedown game where you can just grab a hold of the gi and then just like wrestle them to the ground. But in MMA, if you keep your distance on her, like she has a lot of trouble. Her going out there and taking down Mallory Martin, I don't really see it. So her best path of victory with her submission game, she's going to have to do it off her back, right? Which we know she can do, but her getting on top of Mallory Martin, I don't see it. Her striking being so good that she could beat Mallory Martin striking, but it's not like there's a huge discrepancy. But Mallory Martin should be able to just, and by the way, rewatch the Emily Whitmire fight. She gets a submission but why? Because she's off her back. But why? Because Emily Whitmire takes her down. Well, how? Real easy. Like, Emily Whitmire takes her down like nothing. Right? So now I'm thinking in this fight, it's going to be the same thing. That fight was like 4 months ago, right? And this fight's going to be the same thing. Mallory Martin might strike a little bit here and there, might try to test out a few things here and there. But when she wants this fight to the ground, she'll be able to get it to the ground. And when she does get to the ground, I'm not betting on Polyana Viena just to throw up submissions off her back and hopefully catch something. I think Martin's cardio will be good enough at AKA, at Elevation Fight Team. She's training with a lot of high-level fighters. They're going to have her ready that, this girl's going to throw up this, this, and this. And you just got to shut down this and this and this and grind and pound her the whole way through. So that's kind of what I'm leaning at. With Paula Viana, though, she does have a decent chin. She's got okay durability. I don't think Mallory Martin's going to – she could submit her, I guess, if Macedo was going to do it, then I suppose anybody could do it. But this is just another fight that I chased that decision prop, right? Mallory Martin probably wins it on the basis of the takedowns, the top control, get on top, rack up time, rack up points, rack up the decision. It was plus 120 to take Mallory Martin by decision. But again, the fight's close enough that if you were going to bet it, you could just take the money line and feel okay about that as well. But again, I mean, is this screaming this is one of our parlay pieces? Like, no, not at all. Like, it's a very volatile fight that could go either way. It's very hard to have confidence on either side. But like, again, wrestling and top control wins fights. And if she's not reluctant to do that, then that's her path to victory. Stay out of the armbar on guard. Okay. You've seen it on tape. You know it's coming. Shut it down. Work on that for the entirety of your camp. You'll be okay. So I'm going to take Mallory Martin.
Yeah, that's what I'm most intrigued about is what Mallory Martin's approach is here. Is she going to want to play into the jiu-jitsu game, and does she think of it as lowly as you seem to think of Polyana Vienna's game for sure? And one thing that's always reiterated in all of Vienna's fights is she's won 21 state jiu-jitsu champions. You gotta be very careful about what you're doing when you're on the ground with Polyana. But Veronica Macedo's like, screw you guys, I'm going to submit her regardless. All right, let's keep things moving along. We got Dhiego Lima coming back after a pretty long hiatus against Belal Muhammad. This one stumps me a little bit to the fact that people are so sure on Belal Muhammad. He's reaching the minus 500 range at this point in time. And this is like the highest we'll ever see a guy who, in my opinion, is an above average fighter, but never really a specialist in one exact thing. The guy is great all around. He's not he's a jack of all trades per se, but he's not just a specialist in wrestling, or he's not a specialist in jiu-jitsu. He's not like that, but he does such a good job of just bringing everything together and making it very tough for his opponents, just as we saw in the Lyman Good fight, right? We know Lyman Good, high-level Muay Thai practititioner, trains with Tiger Showman and those guys, and we saw the the pace, the output, the all-around MMA game of Belal Muhammad really break Lyman Good in that fight. So that was a very solid performance for him here, for him there. Dhiego Lima, on the other hand, he's a guy that I've looked to fade in the past. I mean, I cast against him with Jesse Taylor, with Yushin Okami. I ate my shit when he fought Court McGee and beat him there. But that's where we really start to see a little bit of a turn for Dhiego Lima. He's another one that started developing a proficiency for that calf kick. I mean, we saw it in full display against Luke Jamal. That's something that he went out there and started to implement. In my opinion, he could be the technically better striker here than Belal Muhammad, technically speaking. Maybe not from an MMA perspective, but technically speaking. And then a black belt in jiu-jitsu as well too. But again, we don't really see it really fully on display, right? Like anybody could be a black belt in this point in time. But then when you actually see them on the ground, Dhiego Lima doesn't really scream black belt in jiu-jitsu or anything like that. But I still think that this line is a little bit wide. I don't really understand the unanimous love for Belal here. Like I'm a big fan of his. I think he's a great character, a great fighter for sure. But I think Dhiego Lima could slightly be live here. Like he could potentially go out there. He's been out of the game since UFC 243, which is the same night that we saw Israel Adesanya unify the titles against Robert Whittaker. And how many times have we seen Adesanya since then, right? So Lima's been spending time down there at ATT Georgia with him, his brother. Anthony Rocco Martin was another guy that comes out of that gym. Cody Durden is another one that comes out of there as well too. But I'm having a little bit of skepticism regarding this line. I will still take Belal. I'll take Belal to win via decision. Minus 150 is a little bit too steep when we're talking about props here. But man, I don't get this just absolutely writing Dhiego Lima off. Like, again, this is coming from somebody who's loved to fade him in the past, but I think he has the tools to potentially spring off an upset here, which is why I'm not going to be parlaying Belal, especially around that minus 500 line. And even in terms of a prop, that decision prop, a little bit too juiced for my liking, but I feel like that's the most likely outcome here. But I wouldn't completely write off Dhiego Lima. Am I crazy? Talk me down.
Yeah. I don't think you're crazy in that. I would say Dhiego Lima is a live underdog, but he's not his brother Douglas, and that's by a long stretch. I mean, the fact that he's on a 3-fight winning streak in the UFC, I think consider that for him to be overachieving. But a lot of it's been matchmaking, I think, right? He's gotten the benefit of the doubt of some, shall I say, softer fights, I guess, right? The Chad Laprise fight, not supposed to be soft, but it is a striker, right? That's important because when you look at how he loses to Jesse Taylor, he just gets manhandled by a far stronger guy, a better wrestler, and Jesse Taylor is a BJJ black belt hunter himself. Like, he loves to submit black belts. If he takes your back, you're in a lot of trouble. No problem there. Plus, the guy's on juice. All good, right? The Yushin Okami fight, he gives up 6 takedowns to like an absolute shot version of Yushin Okami. So it's the matchmaking helps him out now because he gets Chad Laprise, the primary striker. He gets Court McGee, who, let's be real, Court McGee opted not to try to take down Carlos Condit. So clearly his wrestling and his ring IQ lacks. He did actually shoot a number of takedowns on Dhiego Lima stuff, but not really a wrestler per se. And then Luke Juma, who's most definitely not a wrestler. And in fact, you see Dhiego Lima in that fight going out there and taking down Luke Juma for the decision victory. But it's like, it's not pretty. It never is. Court McGee fight, he got dropped, man. He got knocked down by Court McGee, and it was a really close fight. He wins a split decision, but you can make a strong argument either side. Like, it's a fight. The Luke Juma fight against a split decision, I disagree. I think he should have won unanimous, but it's not pretty, man. 2 takedowns, 32 significant strikes landed, no submission attempts. Like, it's just low pace, him using his wrestling for a change, which you very rarely see out of him. But therein lies the problem with him. When he's fought in strikers, Tim Means, Jing Liang Li, he's getting knocked down in the first round. When he takes on good grapplers, he's getting routinely grounded and out grappled. With Belal Muhammad, you mentioned it your best yourself. Belal Muhammad can do a little bit of everything, right? He can take you down. He can strike with you. He can grind with you. Look at his fight with Tim Means, right? Tim Means has got this guy busted up. And my God, Belal Muhammad just keeps coming after him. Makes this a very close fight. Makes it a very tiresome, gruesome fight and wins the decision. Rightfully so. A lot of people scream robbery on that one too. But it's like Belal Muhammad worked him over. But what I really like about him is that he always mixes up that striking with the takedowns, right? His entire career for the most part. He always mixes in a few takedowns here and there. And when you look at the numbers on him, right? The Randy Brown fight, 2 takedowns, right? He takes down Jordan Mean 4 times. He took down Tim Means once. He took Chance Rancounter down 3 times. He took down Curtis Millender twice. He took down Takashi Sato twice. He took down Lyman Good twice. All lower level guys. But guess what? Dhiego Lima falls in that exact same category. He's right at that level of the guys that Belal Muhammad's been fighting. He's right at that level of the guys that Belal Muhammad's been beating. So I think Belal Muhammad's striking is good enough that he's going to be able to be competitive on the feet with Dhiego Lima. But the mixing in of those strike downs, the pressuring this guy against the cage, the having the slightly better cardio, that's all going to be the difference maker. And with Dhiego Lima, if he does have striking advantage he had, better use it to chin check Belal Muhammad. But like outside of Vicente Luque, and Joban had the guy on skates and he still survived. But like Belal Muhammad's got one hell of a chin on him. Like he could take a shot. And then going back to what we had talked about with Chris Gutierrez, right? Belal Muhammad shows a submission victory over Takashi Sato. And you know what? Tisha Torres has a knockout win in her last fight too. But these are decision fighters, okay? They've got a history of winning fights by decision. So Belal at what? Is he minus 470 right now? That's an egregious price tag. Yeah. That's the kind of price tag that I can see a lot of smart guys like yourself thinking, well, Dhiego Lima's got a shot, and does he lose 9 times out of 10? Probably not. So why not have that little bit of feeler on him? I'm just trying to improve that 470 and Belal Muhammad to win a decision, which is something that he's routinely done throughout the entire course of his career, even going back to his regional show days with Titan FC. He's a decision guy. If he wins a decision, it's minus 150. That is infinitely better than the minus 470 price tag he is on straight money line. And again, Dhiego Lima is durable enough to survive, and Belal Muhammad's got that grinding decision type style. It just screams that if he is going to win, it's probably going to be by decision. If he does lose the fight, he's probably also going to lose the fight by decision. But this fight to straight up go to decision is like minus 220. So the odds makers agree fight's going to go to decision, and the odds makers agree Belal Muhammad's 470, right? He should win the fight. Then why are we not just taking him by decision? Minus 150, much more stomachable.
No, for sure. The price just still scares me a little bit, but again, that decision prop seems like closer to a way better, a bettable range for sure. All right, let's keep things moving along and talking about crazy prices. We got Rodolfo Vieira coming in as a minus 400 favorite here against Anthony Hernandez, who's coming in at plus 325. The seemingly popular play that we have on this fight is the under 1.5, which is currently around minus 160, minus 140, a couple places if you start shopping around. But you know, we know the jury on Rodolfo Vieira, right? Solid jiu-jitsu player, comes out of that Fusion XL camp as well, just like Phil Rowe. The guy looks like he's built like a brick shit house. I mean, John Anik is always salivating at the mouth when he sees this guy. You know, seems very strong. Again, solid jiu-jitsu game, but a lot of question marks, right? Like, what happens when the fight does get pushed a little bit later into the fight? When you see him go into the second round, you do see him start to, you know, suck wind a little bit. But luckily for him, he's going up against guys like Oscar Piechota and Saparbek Safarov. Well, the Piechota fight is the one that went into the second round. But, man, that looked a little bit iffy if he was not able to secure that takedown. Obviously, his striking game is going to be lacking, and I think that's where Anthony Hernandez will definitely have the advantage here. And I think a lot of people are just dropping another one of those Toy Story memes where it's just like, Anthony Hernandez, I'm dropping off, and I'm picking up Kevin Holland. Because if you go back and remember that fight, that was a pick'em fight going into it, because there is value and there is substance to Anthony Hernandez's game, but people just see he was dispatched within like 30 or 40 seconds by Kevin Holland, so he just doesn't matter anymore. So that's why you get him plus 325 on this guy now. But Vieira, he should be able to complete a takedown in that first round, and that might be all he needs. If he's not able to get him out of there in that first round, though, Anthony Hernandez has a solid gas tank. You're talking about a guy that went 5 rounds against Brendan Allen back in the LFA scene, and he reminds me of Cain Velasquez. Like, in the sense of physically, they kind of look the same. They look like they could be relatives. And secondly, how they fight. You know what I mean? They're all pressure all the time. They like to move forward. They like to take you down and, you know, run some ground and pound, look for a submission. I'm not sure if he's going to be looking to take Vieira down here, but he's going to be bringing that pressure of just always moving forward, landing those shots, and making a very difficult time for Vieira to drag this to the ground. So, no, I don't feel comfortable parlaying a guy that's minus 400 here. Obviously, the spot that you want to chase with Vieira would be him to win inside the distance, which is currently sitting at, Vieira by submission is minus 165. Vieira to win inside the distance is minus 240. Way too juice for a prop like that for sure, right? I do think Hernandez has finishing capabilities. I do think him winning side distance at plus 450 isn't crazy, and him to even win in round 3 is plus 1800. As long as he's able to survive that first round, I think he has a good chance of pulling off the upset here. And I'm not sure how anybody could be confident in betting Vieira at that minus 400 line. If you want to parlay a chalk line on that fight, you parlay the fight doesn't go to decision, because this fight is not seeing the scorecards. I think that we're going to see one of them get the finish. My gut is telling me the Vieira side, but it's definitely not to the point where I'm going to be parlaying Vieira. So yeah, Vieira inside the distance, minus 240. Again, I want to give you guys something better. Maybe even Vieira inside round 1, which is probably his best win condition at plus 105. That might be the approach for Vieira here, because after that first round, it's going to get very, very iffy. You're going to be able to take down a guy like Oscar Piechota in round 2. How are you going to be able to take down a guy like Anthony Hernandez in round 2? As I do think that it's going to be a little bit more difficult for him. So I'll side with Vieira. I'll side with that round 1 plus 105, but I'm also peaking up at that plus 1800 on Anthony Hernandez to win this fight in round 3. Or if you want to be a little bit safer, Hernandez in round 2 is plus 1150, which is a solid hedge opportunity as well too. How are you feeling about this one?
Yeah, so with Rodolfo Vieira, he's so good at jiu-jitsu that it's just like Royce Gracie way back in the day. If he's fighting low-level competition who are not adapt to defending these submissions, he's just going to buzzsaw right through them. But the higher he moves up in the MMA ladder, these guys got better takedown defense. These guys got better wrestling. They got better jiu-jitsu. They've got knockout power. Their striking's refined. They got good cardio. And like that's where he's going to run into troubles because he appears to be extremely one-dimensional. Safarov nails him with a front kick. It's like if he's swelling up your eyes shut, if he's rocking you, if he's hurting you, ref essentially they stop it, they look at it, and they must tell him like, you've got till the end of this round to do something. And then he just goes balls to the walls. I need to finish this fight. And as a result, as soon as he does get the fight to the ground, he's lights out good. Anthony Hernandez is another guy that falls in these categories that if he gets taken down by Rodolfo Vieira, he's in a lot of trouble. But yeah, the writing is on the wall for Rodolfo that a guy with decent takedown defense can keep this fight standing, can chip away at this guy. He's not a very good striker. He is very hittable. His cardio doesn't look that good considering you seen the pecs on this guy? Like, what is going on, man? This guy's so thick and jacked up that it's like, no way. And he's only 31 years old, which I thought was kind of surprising, but there's no way he's built to go 3 rounds. He needs to get this fight to the ground and needs to submit you as quick as possible. One thing I don't like about him is that he's at a Fusion XL, right? And where that's going to be a problem is he's not at American Top Team. He's not at an AKA. He's not at, an Alliance or an MMA Lab or a Team Oyama or any of these gyms that it's like they're going to push you with a hard training room. No. His training room consists of Mike Perry, half in the bag, usually only shows up once or twice a week at most, and fight somebody in the parking lot, right? Then you've got Ronaldo Jacare Souza, just got knocked out in a pretty bad spot. He's 42 years old. His body's shot to bits, and he's definitely regressing. And then you've got Alex Nicholson. Did I mention that Mike Perry was half in the bag? Alex Nicholson, juiced to the gills on steroids, okay? Now fights at heavyweight despite being a natural middleweight. Philip Rowe. Why I was okay with it being Philip Rowe is Philip Rowe still gets to train with Rodolfo Vieira and Ronaldo Jacare Souza and a Mike Perry or Alex Nicholson. He can still benefit from that. Those guys aren't benefiting from this situation. They're in a strip mall in Orlando. The only reason those guys move there is that cost of living so cheap, right? That they just set up shop there. And as a result, you see Rodolfo go in with the same thing he does every time. Get the fight to the ground and use his jiu-jitsu. But again, as you progress up, you're going to get in trouble. With Hernandez, is he that step up? The guy's a former LFA champion. He has fought 5 rounds. He has fought, the better body of competition. He does have more UFC experience. But the fact is Marquez Perez took him down, and Marquez Perez submitted him with an anaconda choke. Well, what's going to happen when Rodolfo Vieira takes him down and Rodolfo Vieira probably also submits him? I actually pulled a little greasy lock of the night move on this one, is that I got Rodolfo, but the straight up money line, too big. So Rodolfo by submission, minus 165, it's still too chalky. So then the Rodolfo by first round, plus 105, didn't like it. Rodolfo's second round, plus 450.
Ooh.
And if you really want to get greasy, the Rodolfo third round is plus 850. Ooh. But the reason I'm going to side with the second round here is that you see it in Rodolfo, right? Same thing with the Oscar Pichota fight. Yeah, he's really good at jiu-jitsu, but Pichota's a black belt. Pichota's actually got a win over Keenan Cornelius at ADCC. He's a good grappler. So it does take him 2 rounds to get the job done. He doesn't like to rush the submissions. He's so good at jiu-jitsu. He does take his time, set it up, and then put you away. The only reason he rushed it against Safarov is his eye was swelling shut, and the ref had made it clear you're probably going to get stopped after the first round, so he need to rush it. But beyond that, he likes to take his time a little bit. And with Anthony Hernandez, he's not a walkthrough, like you mentioned. He's a good enough fighter, but ultimately, if you're giving up takedowns and submissions to Marquez Perez, it's not going to bode well in this. But again, you go look at that Marquez Perez fight. He makes him work a little bit in the first. He survives the first. In the second, he gets taken down. In the second, he gets submitted. All I need him to do is make it to the second round. And when he makes it to the second round, I hope in Rodolfo's corner is like, okay, now's the time to put this guy away. You had the first round. Your lungs your muscles are starting to fill with oxygen. You're starting to get tired a little bit. Let's just go away and put him away, and hopefully he doesn't make it to the third. When I say that it's a live dog, Anthony Hernandez, yeah, I can see it. But one thing that you got to keep in mind with Anthony Hernandez is he looked like a star with LFA. He looked like really good at Contender Series, despite the fact that he popped for marijuana, whatever. That's not a big deal. But he gets a no contest. But, he knocks out Jordan Ray, looks good. But as far as him being in the UFC, it's like a bright light effect. Like he's freezing up. The Marcus Perez fight, he starts out okay. In the second round, he gives up a takedown and he just looks lost. He just looks like he's a complete lost fighter in there, and he gets submitted. In the Kevin Holland fight, okay, whatever, bad luck. Knee to the body, 39 seconds in, like could happen to anybody. But Kevin Holland's not exactly, I guess Kevin Holland just knocked out Jacare. So what can you say about that? So again, it's a tough fight. Doesn't look good. But ultimately, the reason why I couldn't back him as an underdog, this was the reason. When you look at Anthony Hernandez and how does he win his fights? He always looks to grapple. He's not a striker. He's not a wrestler. He's a grappler. In his wins, this is low-level shit, man. Beats Kenny Ento, guillotine. His next fight, first-round guillotine. His fourth pro fight, first-round guillotine. His fifth pro fight, first-round standing guillotine. Then he takes on Brandon Allen, who's, tough, durable guy, right? Goes to decision. He knocks out Jordan Wright. The Marcus Perez fight, the grappling exchange cost him. The Jung Young Park fight, he took down Jung Young Park 6 times and caught him with an anaconda choke. And then the Kevin Holland fight, it was over before it got going. But if he was going to beat a guy, how is he going to beat a guy? By grinding on them and trying to submit them and taking them down. That's not a viable path to victory against Rodolfo Vieira. So now he's got to do something that he's never really been able to do so far in his career outside of the Jordan Wright fight, which is be a good striker, wrestler, boxer for 3 rounds, give up no takedowns, keep this thing standing, and box this guy up. Easier said than done, right? That's something you've not made your career on doing that. You've made your career on clinching up with these guys and searching for the neck. That's not going to work here. So what's his path to victory, right? Outlasting him and winning a decision. I like the under 2.5 too. So with the decisions off the table, Hernandez by knockout, okay, he knocked out Jordan Wright, but again, it's just not something he's shown you a whole lot of. Jordan Wright's terrible, by the way. Knocking him out is not the end all be all. I don't know. I do have to side with Rodolfo. The price too big. As far as a parlay piece, can't put all your trust in him, so he won't be a first liner kind of guy. But I'm looking at that second round plus 450.
The narrative that I'm seeing out there regarding Hernandez and his fight with Marcus Perez is that he got taken down in that second round against Perez. That's not technically true. He got hurt by a body kick, and he was just trying to muster himself back up, and then in doing so got submitted by Marcus Perez. I've seen a couple of guys throw that out there, but I do want to correct that. But I do absolutely see your point of view in terms of he can be taken down. And that's the main thing that we got to focus here against a guy like Rodolfo Vieira, who's just a whiz when it comes to the jiu-jitsu game. All right, let's keep things moving along. Next up, we got Julian Marquez, who we haven't seen since July of 2018 when he lost a split decision to Alessio Di Chirico. He's going up against Maki Pitolo here, who is loving this COVID era, man. We're seeing him in there at least 3 or 4 times at this point now. He's coming off a loss last time to Impa Kasanganay. Dating back to June. This is going to be his 3rd fight. He's 1-2 in that stretch. In terms of odds, we got Julian Marquez coming in at -165, +145 for Maki Pitolo. Now, Julian Marquez, surprised that we haven't seen him in this amount of time, right? That's a long time to be out of the UFC, and a lot of people have kind of forgotten about him. If it wasn't for his podcast with porn star, whoever the hell her name is, Kendra Lust. sorry, Cody. You know what the fuck I'm talking about. If it wasn't for that podcast, a lot of people would probably forget about who the hell Julian Marquez is at this point. But most notably, people know him for knocking out Phil Hawes the way that he did in that Contender Series fight, which was absolutely brutal. But in this fight against Maki Pitolo, I think technically speaking, he's kind of outgunned on the feet. It seems like what I've seen from Julian Marquez is he likes to trudge forward, likes to land his bombs, likes to land big strikes, has a bit of a jiu-jitsu game, but I wouldn't say anything like it's a crazy level or anything like that. He does train, I believe, with James Cross and those guys down there. Solid training camp. Good, good chin, very durable as well too. If this fight turns out to be a firefight, I think Maki Pitolo would be the first one to go down, if anything. But I could absolutely see this one going to a decision as well too. I'm seeing love come in for Maki Pitolo, and I absolutely understand it, because when you're looking at these guys fight, it looks like Pitolo has a little bit more technical advantages. The guy throws in combinations a little bit more, has a solid understanding of that game, whereas Julian Marquez seems a little bit more of a brute with his striking approach. Can you really fault Maki Pitolo for getting outstruck by Impa Kasanganay, who, when he's not getting kicked in the face by Joaquin Buckley, is a pretty solid fighter in terms of being able to manage his distance and manage to land combinations and outstrike his opponents. The fight before that, Darren Stewart, who knew that Darren Stewart could freaking guillotine anybody? I'm sure Maki Pitolo was not expecting that and just got put out. I believe it was a standing guillotine, which eventually reverted to the ground. And then before that against Charles Bird, survives that first round. Second round, we see Charles Bird start huffing and puffing. Maki Pitolo goes out there and takes full advantage of that. Now with Julian Marquez coming off of such a long layoff, I'm not sure how you can really be trustworthy of somebody like that at minus 165, especially considering that Julian Marquez isn't really like this crazy standout talent or anything like that, right? You want to kind of give the benefit of the doubt to the dog here, who we've seen active. And even though he's 1-2 in his last 3 fights, seems like he can, put together a solid game plan to beat a guy like Julian Marquez. Now we saw the issues with Maki Pitolo making 170 pounds against Callum Potter, right? His gas tank fails him, looks absolutely horrible on the gas tank in the second and third round, and looks very horrible on the scale as well too. And we saw the minus 400 just blow up in everybody's face because they thought Callum Potter was so crap, right? Now we see him at 185 pounds, and unluckily for him, he's always going to be the one dealing with that size disadvantage. In terms of the size disadvantage, we're talking specifically about a 4-inch height advantage for Julian Marquez, and then the 3-inch reach advantage actually goes to Maki Pitolo here. But when you guys see these guys standing side to side, you're going to be like, okay, Maki Pitolo has a little bit of a Goliath story ahead of him, trying to take down Julian Marquez. But again, Marquez doesn't really bring this crazy skill set to the cage that makes me believe that he deserves a shot at minus 165 after a nearly 3-year layoff, right? I think Maki Pitolo is much more proficient on the feet. And the spot that I'm going to be leaning here would be Maki Pitolo to actually win this fight via decision. I think a lot of people are expecting this to be a bit of a barn burner, but I've seen solid durability from Julian Marquez. Maki Pitolo, decently durable himself too. And for him to win via decision is plus 475. I think that's a solid spot. I see this fight mainly being a contestant in the stand-up realm, but I think both guys' chins and durabilities will hold up. So I'll side with Pitolo, and I'll side with him via decision.
Well, again, so it's hard to get a read on Julian Marquez because everything that you believe he probably will do, it's completely different, right? He's been off for nearly 3 years. We don't know the version that's coming back, but shout out to Josh Morton in the comment section bringing up the fact that this long layoff, it reminds you of Santiago Ponzinibbio of sorts. Before he left, in Ponzinibbio's case, he's on a long winning streak, but he looks good. He had defeated Neil Magny. He's coming off a near 3-yard long layoff, and he had that nasty eye infection. Guy almost loses his eye. He has a doctor tell him, I don't know, man, your fighting career is not looking too good at this point. He makes this miraculous comeback. He's supposed to go and walk right through Jingliang Li, and it's just ring rust, the time off, the timing, everything, and the better fighter in Jingliang Li comes through and he knocks him out. With Julian Marquez, it's again, had he never taken any time off, you would expect that he's got the variables to win this fight, right? He's the bigger guy, he's a stronger guy. Guy's got a back on him like a barn door, man. He's a big, strong, physical guy. His cardio definitely leaves something to be desired, but yeah, he's got a knockout win over Phil Hawes, and that Darren Stewart fight, it is greasy, but you see, he's been working on his ground game, and he picks up a submission victory in the second round. He wins the war of attrition. The Alicio Di Chirico fight, this is a close fight, man. This is a very close fight that could have easily gone either way. He loses a split decision to a guy in Di Chirico who got robbed against Kevin Holland. A guy in Alicio Di Chirico who just shit in pie knocking out Joaquin Buckley with a first-round head kick. A guy that was, a couple seconds away from beating Zach Cummings. A guy that was competitive against Muradov, that's not a bad loss. It's the long layoff. And so why I bring it back to the Santiago Ponzinibbio comparison is not only are these two guys coming off these long layoffs, Ponzinibbio had the eye injury, but man, you look at Julian Marquez, he tore his latissimus dorsi, his lower back, gone. He's had 2 major surgeries to repair it. One is the first doctor told him, you're never going to fight again. The second doctor was like, I specialize in MLB pitchers, right? High-level athletes come in, they tore their lower back because of just the rotation from throwing. I guess it controls your shoulder a lot, right? He looks at him and he's like, this is the worst I've ever seen. You've tore it right off the bone, right? He takes 2.5 years long layoff, and now he's coming back. Why would you back this guy as a favorite? I don't know. He had cardio problems to begin with, so they should be tenfold considering a near 3-year long layoff, all the ring rust. He was hittable to begin with. Maki Pitolo, had been fighting recently. I get all of that. But here's the one thing that you pick up over the years, right? You go and you look at the interviews. And with Julian Marquez, he's pretty open about, I injured myself in this and that. But he does a number of interviews where he talks about working his grappling. He doesn't really want to come in there and slug overhand rights anymore because his shoulder's fucked, right? He wants to go out there. He wants to clinch up. He wants to take you down. Before he left Vegas, he was almost exclusively working on his grappling. Now he's moved to Glory MMA and Fitness in Kansas with James Krause. And these guys are all about the game plan. And so what sounds like a better game plan to you? Go and strike with Maki Pitolo, which, by the way, is if you watch tape on Julian Marquez, that's what the assumption is. That's what he's going to do. That's what he always does, right? What sounds like a better game plan? Go out there and slug with Coconut Bombs, who's got nice technical boxing and loves to work the body, has comparable bad cardio, but, he can push a pace. Anything can happen. You could get clipped. or go and wear on this guy and take him down. And that is how everybody who has defeated him soundly has defeated him. Go out there, clinch this guy, press him against the cage, and take him down. Even Kasanganay, when Kasanganay starts to get hurt a little bit in the first round, he's like, I'm just going to slow this thing down. And you see Pitolo start to get tired. The Darren Stewart fight, it's like he seems to be doing okay, and then Stewart just closed the distance, press him up against the cage. Even the Charles Byrd fight, he had to rely on Charles Byrd gassing out for him to, in order to him to pull that comeback. So honestly, I think Julian Marquez comes out here and realizes he's damaged goods, right? Realizes that standing in the middle of the ring and then swinging bombs with his type of injury after that kind of layoff and the type of opponent they've matched him up against isn't the easiest path to victory. And that he's probably just going to go look and try to press this guy up against the cage. It's untrustworthy because of the layoff. It's untrustworthy because I don't like Marquez as a favorite, no doubt. But if I'm just going to bet all of my favorites by decision, if I'm just going to bet all these fights go to decision, and I truly think there's going to be a lot more decisions than finishes, I think I'm going to come on the other side. If I was going to back Julian Marquez, and I was going to back Julian Marquez by a decision, it'd be plus 270. Now, I know what you're thinking. Julian Marquez is not going to win a decision, right? If anything, he's going for it as well. Well, because he's going to change his style and he's going to want to grapple more, it's going to slow the pace down, right? And if he slows this pace down, I could see him winning decision. It's not like it's a lock. It's not like it's something I love so much, but 270 is the kind of price tag that I'm going to put a little bit of coin on that.
Yeah, if he does change his approach and how he does fight, yeah, that's definitely a very viable win condition for him here from a guy against a guy like Maki Pitolo, who has definitely struggled against those guys in the past. But for me, this fight is a little bit too untrustworthy. I'd be a dog a pass for sure. All right, moving things along, we got Bobby Green coming in against a Jim Miller. Bobby Green, the forever favorite here, minus 260, plus 220 on Jim Miller here. Bobby Green's fights always seem super easy to break down. The guy has great hands, great technical boxing, solid striker, but just fights so goddamn close that you're just like, is the minus 260 worth it? Like we said it even in his last fight against Thiago Moises, where he came in as a very hefty favorite in that fight too. And we see some very questionable fight IQ skills from him. Like in that third round, going for a takedown or dropping for a Kimura against a black belt in jiu-jitsu and then spending the last minute and a half defending, whereas Thiago Moises is the one, chalking up the points. Very sketchy and a very close fight, right? Like you shouldn't even be having a close fight against a guy like Thiago Moises. Again, this is Jim Miller, who, in my opinion, falls into the Clay Guida side of things. And we see Clay give him a little bit of a fight. And even in terms of like DraftKings points, we only saw Bobby Green put up 77 points in that fight, which was a little bit harder of a fight than the next two preceding fights for him. But yeah, I truly think we'll see Green go out there, have a quintessential Green type of performance, landing the better shots on Jim Miller. I think Jim Miller inside round one was like plus 900. That's probably the best hedge opportunity that you have, as we do see the ability for Jim Miller to finish a fight starts to wane after that first round. I think if Bobby gets out of that first round, it's going to start to be smooth sailing, but it's still going to be a close fight. I think the best spot here would probably be the over 2.5. Minus 245 is just too much for me to lay on here, considering the possible finishing opportunity for Jim Miller in that first round. But the last time we saw Bobby Green tapped out was like 12 or 13 years ago. So we've definitely seen him start to round out his game in that aspect. The spot that I'm leaning with, Bobby Green to win by decision, is minus 120. I'm seeing a couple of narratives out there about the round 3 being live, but he just doesn't show that like pedal to the metal type of approach in that third round, right? Like Alan Patrick, a guy that was clearly sucking wind in that third round, and we just didn't see it from Bobby Green in terms of turning it up and trying to get him out of there. Jim Miller, his last couple of fights, even against Vince Pichel last time around, we saw him actually make a good account of himself in that third round against Vince Pichel, who obviously won that fight, but we saw instances where he was able to, reverse positions and get sweeps and land some good shots of his own. So I'm not so much on the round 3 prop. You guys know I'm like very big on round 3 props. This is not one that I think is as live as most people are making it seem, but I do think that Bobby Green comes out on the other side here with a decision victory. Minus 120, not too bad of a line, considering Bobby Green doesn't really finish much anymore. That's usually his path to victory, just like Belal Muhammad. You want to get a better price tag on these guys when they're such heavy favorites, and I think the decision prop is the way to go here. How are you seeing it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that seem certain in life, right? With death, taxes, Michael Johnson fucking it up late, and Bobby Green fights going the distance. That's been the narrative on Bobby Green right from the get-go. The Moises fight, decision. Alan Patrick wins a decision. Fanada wins a decision. Clay Guida wins a decision. Francisco Trinell and Drakkar Klose, both decision losses, which I thought he won. Eric Koch, decision. Landon Venata the first time, decision. Rashid Magomedov, decision. He got knocked out by Dustin Poirier. No, that's no big deal. And 2 years before that, went to decision with Edson Barbosa. It's like, man, Bobby Green, Doesn't really have the power. He's got good striking, good technical boxing, but he's one of these guys that likes to slip and rip, right? He's the only guy that used like the Philly shell, the Mayweather defensive style of boxing in an MMA cage. And he just dicks around way too much, talks trash, points, likes to jab, doesn't really seem to like commit to any actual power on his punches. As far as like, he smells the blood in the water. There's never any blood for him to smell, right? He never really hurts the guy that would be like, oh, Bobby, now's the time, rush him. He just kind of just chips away and wins the fights. So all these fights go to decision. We know that, right? All these fights are close decisions. It doesn't matter if he fights the number 100 guy in the world or the number 5 guy in the world. They're relatively close decisions all the time out. That's why he's losing to Drakkar close, and I thought he won. That's why he's losing to Francisco Trinaldo, and I thought he won. That's why he lost to Thiago Moises, and honestly, I thought he did win. Now, MMA Decisions has it, I think, 11-4 for media members scoring the fight for Bobby Green. But the thing is, you can't scream robbery at Bobby Green because he does it to himself. If it's 1-1 going into the third, you are sweating balls. Yeah. And then you'd like to say, well, what if it's 2-0 Bobby Green going to the third? It's never 2-0 Bobby Green going to the third. Because if he does win the round, it's like by the slightest of margins. The Clay Guida fight, it was competitive. He's just in so many of these close fights that you would love to back him as an underdog, as an underdog play. Sure, all day. Bobby Green's going to give me a competitive effort. It'll be a close, greasy decision. He's an underdog. Give me the shot. But he's never the underdog. He's always the favorite. He's always like a sizable enough favorite. This is no different. He's minus 260 over Jim Miller. Is this week's Clay Guida versus Michael Johnson? Is the old veteran dog going to go out there and score a couple takedowns and just outwork the clown? It's possible. Because as I mentioned to Paul Shaughnessy, if you're a judge, this is human nature, okay? You're a judge, and you've got one guy who's laughing and clowning and doing fuck all, right? And allowing this to be a competitive fight and jabbing, rinky-dink jabs. And you got the other guy's Jim Miller. He's a 30-fight UFC veteran. He's been around the block. Everybody knows him. He's the blue-collar, quintessential hardworking man. He's nose to the grindstone, coming after you and trying to work you over a little bit. Well, who do you score these close rounds to? The really likable guy that you've seen him a zillion times over, or fucking Bobby Green, who's just like not even acting like he's serious about this? And then every fight, it's like, I'm done, man. I'm retiring. He literally says he's retiring after every fight. So he's one of these like 1 foot in, 1 foot out kind of guys. He was the COVID king, right? He was the king of the pandemic until he lost to Thiago Moises because he's fighting all the time. But that bodes well for him because he's not committed enough to put in an 8-week training camp in. He'd rather just fight every 3-4 weeks, take short notice spots here and there. And that's how Bobby Green acts. So at 260, you don't like it. However, if Bobby Green wins this fight, we've outlined, he wins a decision, right? If Bobby Green loses this fight, as we've outlined, he loses a decision. But the fight's going the distance. If Bobby Green straight up's 260, but the fight to go the distance is minus 205. So that covers you both sides. If Bobby Green wins, then your decision prop hit. If Bobby Green finds a way to lose this close decision, your decision prop still hits. If you're going to try to chase Bobby Green's number down, you would chase Bobby Green, obviously, by decision. I think it's sitting at, I want to say, minus 150, and it's a lot better than the price tag of minus 260 that you're currently getting, just on the basis of that's how he does it. Now, Jim Miller is the X factor here, because Jim Miller don't like going the distance. Jim Miller likes to finish guys in the first round. But when it don't work for Jim Miller, he settles into the lose the decision, right? Like he can beat the Roosevelt Roberts in the first round. He can beat some of these young up and coming guys in the first round. But Bobby Green has seen it all. Bobby Green has fought BJJ black belts. He's fought in Sambo world champions. He's fought in a high level of opposition, and he is slick. He is sneaky. He's still got something. The reason I am going to settle on Bobby Green as the pick in this one, again, I think fight goes the distance is your play to cover you on both sides. But the reason why I'm going to settle with Bobby Green is I don't want to say it's this week's Clay Guida versus Michael Johnson, because Johnson just couldn't stuff the takedown, had nothing to offer. He was a fish out of water. Just go back to Bobby Green versus Clay Guida. You see Bobby Green will defend these takedowns. Bobby Green will get out of these spots. Bobby Green will move. Alan Patrick's very one-dimensional. He is a shoot on the hips over and over and over as much as I can until I gas myself out. Bobby Green does a pretty good account of himself in that, keeping this fight standing, making this guy work. Use a little offensive wrestling of your own. You do see the evolvement of him. You do see this where there are skills. It's that like, what's upstairs, the ring IQ, non-existent, right? He fights these really stupid game plans, and that's why it's always going to be a greasy premise betting him as a favorite. I think this screams another decision type fight. Fun fight, good fight, entertaining fight, but like you're going to be very frustrating backing him as a favorite. However, here I am sitting on the chair telling you I'm likely going to back Bobby Green as the favorite.
I didn't want to be the one to bring up the Michael Johnson comparison, so I left that to you. But like, yeah, when you're talking about untrustworthy fighters and you're coming Monday morning, I'm like, oh, I should have cashed my Bobby Green decision ticket against Thiago Moises. You dug that hole yourself. You know what I mean? You know he fights close, and that's what you should always expect from no matter who he's fighting, even if it's Jim Miller or Thiago Moises. All right, let's keep things moving along. We got almost 300 people in here. Shout out to everybody that's joining us on this Thursday evening. If you haven't already, make sure you guys hit that like. It's a huge help. It is an absolutely huge help. Make sure you guys hit that like, and as well, subscribe if you haven't already subscribed as well too. All right, let's keep things moving on. We got the third last fight here. We got Kelvin Gastelum fighting at 185 pounds once again against Ian Heinisch. Luckily for him, he's not dealing with as big of a size discrepancy as he was in his last fight. In terms of odds, we got minus 200-ish, minus 220 for Kelvin Gastelum, plus 170 to plus 185 for Ian Heinisch. He's dealing with a 2-inch height disadvantage as well as a half-inch reach disadvantage. I think this is one of those stories where you're just like, when you go back in time, you're just like, why the hell did this guy just not go to the fight in the division that he should be fighting at? Because he would be way more successful. You know, I mean, I don't know if it's the quesadillas or the tacos or whatever it is. This guy just can't let the food go. And he's just ballooning up to 185 pounds and is just not able to get his game going. And it truly comes to fruition when he's fighting bigger guys. Like the first guy he lost to at 185 pounds, Chris Weidman. Yeah, I mean, doing a great job in that first round, but in the second round, you see the size and the weight and the all those discrepancies come to fruition, and we see Chris Weidman eventually lock up. I believe it was an arm triangle choke that he finished him with. Then you see him go out there and beat like Jacare, and you see him beat Michael Bisping, and you're like, oh, okay, he's good to go. But you know, Bisping and Jacare at that point in time is definitely not a win you want to be super happy about or anything like that, right? Goes into the Israel Adesanya fight, makes a solid case for himself here. I mean, I believe it was like 2-2 going into that fifth round, if I'm not mistaken. Very, very close fight. Both guys having a lot of success, and then Adesanya just really pulls away in that fifth round. The Darren Till fight, another fight where he's like David versus Goliath, just not able to deal with the height and the reach of Darren Till, who did a really good job of staying on the outside, keeping Gastelum at bay, and just picking him apart there. And then the Jack Hermansson fight, that's where we see the strength of these middleweights really start to catch up with him, because he's the one who completes or reverses the takedown attempt, ends up on top, but still somehow we see Jack Hermansson dive for the legs and pull off, I believe it was a heel hook there. And again, that's just an attribution to how much of a strength discrepancy he's going to be at these higher weight classes. Now, is Ian Heinisch along the Jack Hermansson side? And I don't think so. I think that Ian Heinisch, he's a guy that's been getting away with his high-ish output grappling type of approach, kind of outworking his opponents like he did against Cesar Ferreira and Antonio Carlos Jr. But then when he fights guys that are like a little bit more skilled than him, like a Derek Brunson or Omari Akhmedov, he starts to come up short. Then we see him go over to Tiger Muay Thai, I believe, somewhere there in Thailand, start refining his hands, and he comes back and pulls off this beautiful knockout victory of Gerald Meerschaert. But unfortunately, due to these COVID times, he's stuck in Denver now, and he's training, I believe, at Genesis Training Center. I'm not even entirely sure who's actually over there helping him out. Yeah, exactly. So I think this is a fight where we see Gastelum successful at middleweight. This is a type of opponent that falls into the categories of, a 2018 Michael Bisping, a 2019 Jacare Souza. And I feel like Heinisch is not really going to be able to challenge him that much. I think that the striking of Gastelum is always super underrated. The guy has some solid power in his hands, some solid technique. Could use a little bit of work in terms of diversifying his combinations, especially working at King's MMA and Rafael Cordeiro on those guys. But he still gets the job done when he goes out there and gets his hands going. Solid wrestling and grappling and scrambling game. I remember way back in the day going to a UFC fight night in Indianapolis when he fights Brian Melancon and shows off this beautiful grappling display and submits him in that fight. Beautiful fight for him there. And that's him at his best, when he's able to implement a full MMA game. And to me, it feels like he can just completely out MMA Ian Heinisch here. Do I agree with the price tag though? No, because it's just the weight class thing that really disturbs me. Like, what if Heinisch is the stronger guy? And what if he is able to bully him up against the cage, maybe take him down and do some good work from on top? Personally, I don't see it happening, which is why I'm not willing to go out there and shell out minus 225 on a guy like Kelvin Gastelum, who, again, I will always reiterate, this guy deserves to be at 170 pounds to show his true skill set. But I will go with Gastelum. I will go with him to win via decision. I will entertain the round 3 prop here for Gastelum, as we've seen Heinisch start to slow down later in fights. Plus 1375 is not too bad for Gastelum, but I think the safest spot to go would be for him to win via decision, via decision, which is currently sitting at plus 105. I don't think that's his bad spot. At least you're getting plus money, you know what I mean, compared to like Bobby Green and Belal Muhammad from earlier in this card. But I do like Gastelum here. I think he gets it done via decision. Plus 105, not too bad of line. How are you thinking about this one?
Yeah, I love how you brought up the Brian Malonson fight, Strikeforce's own Brian Malon, who went in throwing some heat.
Yeah.
Yeah, you see that evolution of Kelvin Gastelum. Kelvin Gastelum is just, what that basically reiterates is that he's been around for a long time. The guy's been around. He beat Uriah Hall to win the Ultimate Fighter, and that was ages ago. And since then, he's fought a lot of, up-and-comers, aged veterans, former world champions, lots of former world champions. It's just like, I don't know. I would love to agree. Everybody agrees. We're all on the same page. Guys are welterweight, right? Guy should be fighting 170 pounds. He's 5'9". His best days would have been at 170. Here's the thing. He can't make 170. He's far too big to make 170. Yeah, he's only 5'9", but see, I hate to be the guy that brings up heritage and this and that, but he's in the same boat as Matt Serra, right? Matt Serra, Italian, Kelvin Gastelum, Portuguese. These guys love to eat. Cain Velasquez, the same thing. Mexican barbecue. I remember the UFC would go and do these like behind the scenes stuff at Cain's house. And you'd be like, oh, I'm having a barbecue. You should have seen the way this guy ate, man. And our old boy, Neil Forrester, right?
Yep.
He was good friends with Cain Velasquez. He had gone down to his place and it was like, Cain likes to eat, man. Cain likes to eat. He likes to enjoy himself. It's part of his heritage. That's it. Matt Serra used to fight at 155. Now he weighs 300 pounds. He used to fight at 155. And I'll never forget, they interviewed him. They're like, why not go back to 55? And he's like, I'm Italian. I like pasta. I like lasagna. We're going to grandma's house. I'm not saying no. This Nona, I'm pretty sure you called her. It's like, that's how Kelvin's the same way. Now you say, okay, Kelvin could shore up the diet, make 170. Remember when he fought Tyron Woodley? He weighed in at 180 pounds.
Yeah.
And his body physically shut down. He spent the night in hospital, okay? Fought Tyron Woodley. I don't know how they got cleared. He spends the night in hospital after weigh-ins, fights Tyron Woodley the next day. And Tyron Woodley, you guys all know me, is the shittiest fighter who's ever won a UFC title, that he still only manages a split decision win over Kelvin Gastelum, who was 180 pounds, spent the night in hospital. But that was the end of 170 for him. He can't make it. So as far as 185, he's always going to be, fighting the uphill battle. But let's not forget, man, he gave Israel Adesanya his toughest fight, bar none. It's 2-2. It's 2-2 going into the fifth round. All he's got to do is win the fifth round, and he's a world champion. First man to defeat Adesanya. He rocks Adesanya with a head kick. Guy's 5'9". Guy can't fight at middleweight. He rocks him with a head kick. He puts it on him. The fifth round is his glorious moment. And the momentum's in his side here. He won the fourth. Now we're going into the fifth round. Just do it again, Kelvin. And then that's where you see where Adesanya truly is one of a GOAT in the making. It's like he turns it on. And that fifth round was such a savage beating on Kelvin Gastelum. He got beat up so bad in that fifth round. It's as if Adesanya took his soul. He took his soul right from Kelvin. Kelvin has not looked the same since. What I mean by that is the Darren Till fight, he didn't attempt to do anything to Darren Till. He did not fight him the same way he fought Adesanya. He did not try to close the pocket. He didn't try to get his notoriously quick hand speed going. He didn't try to throw these head kicks. He didn't try to bully him around. He didn't try to take him down, which is like, why not try to take him down at the very least? It's Darren Till of all people, right? It's like he just sat on the outside and was like, I don't want to get hit. I don't want to engage. I don't want to go into the pocket. I'm just going to sit out here and let it happen. And he allows the victory to fall away from him. The Hermansson fight, he tries to, change that. He's aggressive. He comes at Hermansson. And again, it doesn't go his way. So you get a sense that it's like, yeah, he shouldn't be at middleweight, but he's stuck at middleweight. It is what it is. He's got 1 foot in, 1 foot out. His best wins, you nailed it. His best wins, Michael Bisping, a month removed from a savage beating against Georges St. Pierre. He's fought Jacare Souza, who was beating him up until he caught him later in the fight and started to pull away from him, right? Vitor Belfort, like a shell of Vitor Belfort. He's fought a lot of these aged legends, right? Johnny Hendricks, right? Even the Tim Kennedy fight, he lost the first 2 rounds against Tim Kennedy and then rallies in the third against him. But and that's Tim Kennedy's retirement fight. Like, it's the end of the road. He looks great against the old veterans that are going to stand with him. He does not look good against these top 3, top 5 guys outside of an epic fight with Adesanya. How much it took out of him, I don't know. But this is that step down that he needs. This is the type of fight that is very winnable for Kelvin Gastelum. We just need him to be motivated. You check out the interviews on him. He sounds motivated. He sounds like he wants to right the ship. 3-fight losing streak in the UFC in 2021. That doesn't look good. They're cutting guys like Anthony Pettis. They're looking to free up some cap space. You're a former title challenger. You won the Ultimate Fighter. You make good money. You don't want to be in a 4-fight losing streak at this stage. He's still young enough. He's got to be motivated. He's got to go after it. But yeah, he's got faster hands than Heinisch. He's got better output than Heinisch. He's got better cardio than Heinisch. He's fought. All of his fights are always scheduled 5-round fights, right? He's been 5 rounds a few times. Cardio is not going to be a problem. His chin's not a problem. Honestly, he should just be able to go there and outpoint Heinisch, grind him up. And to that extent, I would say another fight, I think, goes to decision. But I think Kelvin Gastelum is going to be able to grind him up. Heinisch is durable enough himself, right? Good submission defense. We've seen him, Antonio Carlos Jr. on his back. He's able to survive, good chin. He's got good striking. He's got good power, but not enough to knock out Kelvin Gastelum. And flip side to that, Kelvin Gastelum, he's got good power, but Michael Bisping and, Vitor Belfort and those guys, again, they're not Ian Heinisch, prime of his life, 31 years old, training at elevation, good crew of guys around him. It just screams like Kelvin gets back in the win column, but takes a smart approach, outpoints this guy. Heinisch gives a decent account of himself, but ultimately a little too much back class in Kelvin Gastelum's corner. I could see you passing on this fight. I don't want you sitting at home thinking, man, Cody's been betting all of these decisions and passing on a lot of fights. Like, you guys know me, especially if you watch the show week to week. Like, when I like a spot, I'll jump on the spot. If I like a prop, we jump on the prop. But the UFC is giving you a UFC title fight. They're giving you Gilbert Burns versus Kamaru Usman, a nice fight. And then they've actually opened up your mouth and shoveled dog shit down it, right? And on a betting perspective, it's largely the same thing. And so Kelvin Gastelum versus Ian Heinisch is a fun fight. It's a fun fight that I would put on another pay-per-view main card, let's say. It's a fight that could be on any card and be enjoyable, but it's not like a screamable, like, this is my spot, this is my spot, this is an easy win, this is going to be a walkthrough. Kelvin's been having issues. Ian is an overachiever. It should be competitive. But Kelvin should get this victory. He should get this victory by decision. And that was a plus, I think, was it 105? Let me just check really quick. Yeah, it was plus 105. It was plus 105. I like that, to be honest, right? It's a plus money play on Kelvin. How do I turn, my favorite who should win, but I'm a little bit iffy on, I don't want to trust too much. How do I turn into a plus money price tag that I can, it's, way easier to handle? Okay, that's what I would scream. And again, if I'm going to bet all these guys that I like by decision, more times than not, I think that we're going to come out on the positive side of it. And because they're all plus money, it should be profitable at the end of it.
Shout out to our guy, Zach A, pretty much saying Decision Mania 2021. And he's absolutely correct. There's a lot of these fights are probably going to see the judges' scorecards tonight or this weekend. Go ahead, Cody.
But look at last week. Last week was the same thing. There's a lot of these spots where it's like, no, wait. And last week they were all 3-1, man. Like, there was a lot of really nice, juicy spots at 3-1. Even a couple weeks ago, the Austin Lingos of the world, all those spots, there's a lot of decisions. You look at the numbers this year, it's something like 67% of the fights have been going to decision. But when you're getting them at 3-1, they're hitting more than 50-50, and they're hitting at 3-1 price tags. This week, the bookies wised up. It's like, ooh, there are a lot of decisions. That's why they're only giving you these plus 100, your guy wins decision. Plus 120, your guy does decision. We were looking at props. We want nice props. The finished props, you just don't see them in a lot of these fights. The decision props are not good. So it is a decision card. The bookie's aware of that. That's why the over 2.5 is right across the board, heavy price tags. And, you can bet an underdog by decision, not improve the price tag that much. You can bet a favorite by decision, and he's still a slight favorite, if not these plus 105s. So I really do think that a Decision Mania 2021, this is a card that screams decision card of Decision Mania 2021.
For sure. All right, we got 317 live viewers. Shout out to everybody in here, but we only have 103 likes. You should guys hit that thumbs up, guys. Come on, it's a huge help for us here and a huge help for the odds crew as well too. All right, let's get to our co-main event where we have a very intriguing fight. Maybe not co-main event pay-per-view worthy, but definitely very, very intriguing. Featuring a UFC belle of the ball here with Miss Maycee Barber coming in as a very slight underdog here against Alexa Grasso, who's been through the ringer in the UFC already. Very much looking forward to this fight, and I started this breakdown off simply by saying belle of the ball because this is a theme that I want to make something real in 2021 because it has been for the first 3 cards in the UFC. We didn't have one last week as I didn't feel the UFC is pushing anybody, but clearly they're pushing Maycee Barber here, who's coming off a loss, and they still put her in that co-main event slot here. They're 0-3 in 2021. We got Joaquin Buckley that gets deaded by Alessio Di Chirico. We got Munir Lazez that gets put away by Warley Alves. And then we got Amanda Ribas, who got absolutely torched on the feet by one Marina Rodriguez. Is Alexa Grasso going to do the same thing here to Maycee Barber? And in my opinion, I think so. I like what we see from Alexa Grasso. I like what we see from her hands. She's very experienced at this point in time. The only time we've ever seen her finish, which is more often than not the path to victory for Maycee Barber, she only got tapped out by Tatiana Nurmagomedov because that girl is an absolute beast, deserves to be champion at 115 pounds. Unfortunately for her, She just can't stay active enough. I think she has a lingering neck issue or a spinal issue or something. But if she was active, she would absolutely be champion. So to get finished by a girl like Tatiana is not anything to hang your head too low about. But when you talk about like the stylistic matchup here, Maycee Barber really likes to use her kicks. She's very powerful too. She's put it like all of her wins have come via finish, except that one where she took Mallory Martin to a decision. I think it was her second ever fight. But for the most part, she goes out there and puts chicks away, even if she's down early. You know what I mean? The JJ Aldrich fight, we saw JJ technically the better boxer in that fight, and she landed some good strikes on her, even planted Maycee on her butt a couple times. And if you go back and look at the judges' scorecards, all of them gave it to JJ Aldrich in that first round. But again, just like I forgot who I brought up a couple weeks ago, they always lose rounds, but then they go out and finish their opponent in the second round, so the judges' scorecards don't even matter. I believe in the durability of Alexa Grasso. I think she'll be able to take the shots of Maycee Barber, and add into the fact that Maycee's coming off that serious knee injury after that Roxanne Modafferi fight. I think this is a very, very tough fight for her to come back to. I will go out there and say that I believe Alexa Grasso is the toughest opponent that she's faced to date. Roxanne Modafferi is tough in an extent that she brought that grappling edge, whereas Alexa Grasso is going to be more refined on the feet, at least in my opinion. I will also throw this hot take out there that we saw Roxanne Modafferi win that first round against Maycee Barber, even with Maycee Barber at 100%. She tore that knee in that second round after she got dropped by a jab from, or a lead hook. I will give it to that from Roxanne Modafferi. That's where we see Maycee Barber go down, start clenching at her knee. And that's obviously, she did have some success after that. She reversed positions a couple times, landed some good shots from on top. Then we see Roxanne Modafferi regain position. But could have been, given how that first round went, if Roxanne Modafferi's durability held up, she could possibly take down Maycee Barber over and over again and possibly win that fight regardless. But this is a completely different matchup. You got two strikers going at each other, and I think that Alexa Grasso has the technical advantage here. I do like what we see from Alexa. I think she's going to be the sharpest striker, the shots down the middle, kind of standing her ground whenever Maycee Barber is throwing her weird kicks and kind of her taekwondo, karate style, whatever you want to call it. She likes throwing her kicks. That's what her game is based around. And then she starts to let her hands go. But it doesn't look good when you're getting dropped by some of these girls that are technically better in the boxing room, and now you're going up against one of the better boxers in the UFC. At least in this flyweight division now. And that's another aspect I want to bring up in this, is both these fighters used to be at 115 pounds. Both had a ton of issues trying to cut the weight, get down to that weight class, and now they're up to at 125 pounds. Last time we saw Alexa Grasso go out there and fight Ji Yoon Kim, and you can see noticeably that she's a smaller fighter, but she still goes out there and wins that fight. Maycee Barber, on the other hand, I think we just saw her fight Roxanne Modafferi at 125 pounds. Obviously didn't go the greatest for her. I think we'll see Alexa Grasso land the better shots. I think we'll see her durability hold up, and I think she could win this fight via decision. And that's the approach that I'm taking here. So I like Grasso by decision, which is currently at plus 125. Wish I was getting a slightly better price tag. Personally, I bet her at minus 120. I see this as like a 55 to 60% chance that Grasso wins this fight, taking all things into consideration, the layoff, the technical advantages that I believe that Alexa Grasso has. And I think that Grasso is the much better fighter here, at least from the technical standpoint, and given where they're at in their careers. So I'm going Grasso decision plus 125. I believe you're on the other side. Please make your case.
Yeah, I decided to go with Barber again. It's just a very close fight, and it's going to be a dog or pass fight. They were giving you Maycee Barber at a dog price tag. It's like, whatever, I'm going to take a shot on it. And then furthermore, the Maycee Barber by decision, because again, we're going to take these decision props. It's just an astronomical price tag, man. It's a nice, big, juicy plus money price tag. It's like, I'll chase it a little bit. Do I agree that Alexa Grasso is a better fighter? Yeah, dude, I completely agree. Maycee Barber seems to be a fucking fraud. Okay, first and foremost, she's very much like Sage Northcutt in that she looks the part. She beats a whole bunch of cans. She comes to the UFC, but her primary trainer is her dad. And that only gets you so far. So let's look at the notable examples. And I mean, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, his dad was his coach, Ray Thompson, but he's a former champion, right? I mean, the Jake Matthews. Jake Matthews' dad's his top coach. The kid never progressed. He just never get any better. He just like plateaued. It's like, okay, Jake Matthews. Sage Northcutt. When Sage Northcutt came to TriStar, apparently he had a bad striking day. He called it sparring day. Calls his dad, got beat up, bad sparring day. Dad yanks him out of TriStar, takes him home. And then how has his career progressed? And then you see the same thing with Maycee Barber. Bucky Barber is a fucking loser, man. This guy's out of his mind. Like, your daughter's the one competing. You should be supportive of her. You shouldn't be out there talking shit about girls like Roxanne Modafferi, who's a near 50-fight veteran of the sport, fought everybody on their mother. It's like, how are you going to disrespect somebody like that? But, oh, well, it's the knee injury. And Maycee would beat this girl 9 out of 10 times if it wasn't for the knee injury and this and that. It's like, just accept the loss and move on. Barber's young, but Barber's just got her mouth is right in checks that her ass just can't check or cash. She's just young. She's 21 years old, and she's talking about, I'm going to beat John Jones's record as the youngest female champion. Bitch, have you not realized who the champion of your division is? Have you not? You want me to refresh your memory real quick? It's Valentina Shevchenko. You think your chances of defeating her as a 21-year-old prospect? No, it's not realistic. But that's the bullshit that she's been fed from childhood. You're better than the other kids you go to school with. You're better than the other kids in your gym. But see, she was originally at Fort Collins MMA, and the head coach there, it's another Colorado gym, but the head coach there is Ryan the Lion Schultz, Sengoku veteran, IFL veteran, dude, but was a grinding machine. Has that big win over Chris Horodecki in the IFL days. Really hurt Canadian fans. Absolute mauling of maulings in the rematch, of course. But it's like, man, that when she was with Ryan Schultz, he kept her grounded, and she used her wrestling a lot more. So you see under the Contender Series against Jamie Colleen, she takes Jamie Colleen down. She outgrinds her. She beats on her. The Hannah Cyphers fight, I didn't think she looked good standing in that fight, but get the fight to the ground, muscle this girl to the ground. You see, then at some point, she bails on poor Ryan Schultz. Goodbye, Ryan Schultz. I'm going to go train at one of the bigger gyms in Colorado. Gets run out of those gyms, ends up at Rufus Sport, my least favorite gym on the planet. And then from there, it's like, now she thinks she's a fucking technical boxing wizard. She thinks her hands are real hot shit. She goes out in these fights, and she's not trying to take the fight to the ground anymore. She's not trying to use her size. She's just trying to get in there and just muscle, as if she thinks, I'm just going to hit this girl once and she'll topple over. So it was a really humbling experience to lose to Roxanne Modafferi, only she didn't seem humbled by it. She seemed more just like, oh, well, it was the knee. It was the knee. I'll tell you something. The knee injury is a blessing in disguise because Maycee Barber is too young to be competing at this level and needed that time on the sidelines. She needed that time to refocus, to regroup, work on your other skills, work on your ground game, work on your wrestling, work on your jiu-jitsu, work on your striking, work on your head movement, work on your defensive lapses in your game, work on all that, rehab the knee. But instead of them just rushing her into another spot or them just giving her a quick turnaround, at least she's been forced to sit on the sidelines, fix herself up, get remotivated. Now you don't got to think about youngest champion. That pressure's gone, right? That ain't going to happen. You're not beating the record. Just focus on getting back in the win column and doing your thing. The UFC's got enough faith that they're going to book her as a co-main event, so they're not completely off the ship just yet. She hasn't really shown you much, but the reason why I ended up making this a dogger pass instead of just fading, I mean, I just talked a whole bunch of shit about her. Why would you now be backing her? Well, the reason why is because they've done a good job in giving her. Alexa Grasso is the better fighter, appears to be, has the experience and all that, but Alexa Grasso is a natural strawweight. She's a 115-pound fighter. She's fought once in her entire career at 125. That was the last one against Soo-Young Kim, and she didn't look all that good. How does she lose at 115 pounds? Mostly always bigger, stronger, more physical fighters that back her up against the cage. Yeah, she's a boxer. She likes to box. Similar to her training partner, Irene Aldana, she's pretty much a one-dimensional boxer. So why would you play that game? Why would you not just bully her into the cage and outmuscle her? So you see Ronda Marcos lose a split decision against her because she had a lot of success bullying this girl around. And then Carlos Esparza, it's the same thing. Bully this girl straight forward. And obviously, with Tatiana Suarez, it's like she's such a gangster that, like, I'll give you a free pass on that one. But the game plan, the blueprint, has been shown. It's been written already. It's been drawn up. You need to not stand and strike with this girl at distance. You need to clinch her up, try to take her down, slow this thing down against the cage, and just use a lot of good clinch control. And Maycee Barber hasn't been showing that lately, but that is at heart who she is. So looking at her Instagram stuff, I was really hoping that she wasn't just taking kickboxing classes at Rufus. And she linked up with Izzy Martinez, the former Jackson Winklejohn coach. And it seems like she's working a lot on her wrestling. And so I would like to hope that instead of, how did you lose against Roxanne? I got clipped by this shot that I didn't see coming because I didn't respect her and I really didn't think she was going to hit me, nor did I think it would do any damage. And it buckled my knee, right? Well, how are you going to win this fight? Don't go out there and stand with Alexa Grasso, a credible boxing champion, one of the better pure, clean boxers in the division. Why would you go strike with her? If ego gets in the way, and it very well may, because it seems like that's kind of the personality that she has, but like, don't let that be the case. Go back to your roots. Go back to the basics. Muscle this girl up against the cage, pin her to the ground, and win a decision. And to that effect, if Maycee Barber just decides to fight that good game plan, her by decision is plus 300. So I was like, oh, I am betting all these decision props. Why not? This one's at least 3-1. I haven't been getting 3-1s, but I've been getting like, plus 105s, plus 120s, minus 120s. I mean, even Usman, I think he's only even money. So it's like, decision props haven't been super favorable, but because Barber is aggressive, she's an inside the distance type fighter. Grasso is not. Grasso is a decision type fighter. So if Barber doesn't knock her out, how's she going to knock out Grasso? Hell of a chin on her. She's not going to submit. I guess she could, but I honestly don't see it happening, to be honest with you. Then she just does the same thing. Felice Herrig, of all people, has got to win over Alexa Grasso by doing the same thing that the other three did. Use your physicality. Use your strength. Muscle up against the cage. Don't just box with her the whole time. Barber's got to do that. But again, I mean, this doesn't scream tons of confidence. It doesn't scream, I got a little upset for you guys here. It's just like, this is a close 50-50 wild match fight. Not a whole lot of confidence. Both girls got a bunch of red flags in their games, but I am going to side with the ever so slight underdog Maycee Barber, and I would chase a little bit of extra price tag on that plus 300.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to this fight. It almost reminds me of maybe not the level of it, but Carlos Dhiego Ferreira and Benil Dariush from last week, where we have almost a 50-50 fight. Both individuals very, very skilled and making improvements on a fight-to-fight basis. So I'm very much looking forward to that. If you'd like to watch the full video, make sure you guys hit up odds.com. The link is in the description. And we're moving on to the main event here with Kamaru Usman defending his title against Gilbert Burns. We got a 170-pound title fight here. Kamaru Usman hoping to defend his title for the third time, going up against a former training partner in Gilbert Burns. Both guys were down there at Sanford MMA. And I just saw something today saying that Kamaru Usman was looking to make the change of training camps even before this whole Gilbert Burns thing came up, which makes it a little bit more interesting, because I thought he left Sanford MMA just to allow Gilbert Burns, who's more than often in the corners of these Sanford MMA guys. He seems a little bit more dialed in with the coaching. So Usman was just like, you know what, I'll step away. I'll go to a different camp. But it seems like and from the way he was talking about it, it seemed as though he wanted to get a camp that he could be a little bit more of the focus and not have 150 guys that are in the camp and you have to, share time with all these other guys. You're at the top of your game. You want to get the best level of training and you want to get the most level of focus. And I think he could, he couldn't have done much better than a guy like Trevor Whitman, one of the best coaches in the game right now. Doesn't have a huge stable of guys. Like he has Justin Gaethje, he has Rose Namajunas. I think Eddie Alvarez is spending time over there a little bit now too. But I do like what we're seeing from Usman in terms of the camp that he chose to go to. Not to mention, it's going to allow him to really round out his game and the striking aspect, as I believe that's the weakest part of his game. Even though we've been seeing improvements from it, going to a guy like Trevor Whitman will only help him. So I'm really looking forward to that aspect from it as well too. Kamaru Usman, obviously heavy favorite now. We are seeing a little bit of money come in on Gilbert Burns. We got minus 275 for the champion, plus 235 on Gilbert Burns, and I feel like we get people that are on one side or the other and extreme on one side or the other. And I'm trying to dial myself back a little bit because I truly believe that Usman is one of the best fighters in this division and probably one of the best fighters ever. Like, given his style, his pace, his pressure, his wrestling acumen, and the fact that he has the ability to keep it up for 25 minutes is very, very impressive. Like, there's guys that have all those skill sets, but just can't keep it consistent throughout the fight. But you got that in Kamaru Usman. Another guy that has that is Colby Covington, which is why I think he's the only guy that truly has a threat here to dethrone Kamaru Usman. And even though he beat him in the last fight, I feel like if that fight was to happen 100 times, it might be 60-40 Kamaru, 55-45 Kamaru. But here with Gilbert Burns, I think he's the second biggest threat to Kamaru Usman. You throw into the X factor that, they've sparred over 200 rounds together. But a lot of people keep looking at that from the Gilbert Burns aspect. Like, oh, Gilbert knows what his weaknesses are. Don't you think that it works the other way too? Like, obviously Usman knows what the weaknesses of Burns's game is if they've sparred over 200 rounds, right? I also think that people are really overblowing how good Gilbert Burns has looked in his last two fights. Don't get me wrong. Impressive performances, went out there and did what he was supposed to do, but knocking out a 45-year-old Damian Maia or a 42-year-old Damian Maia, great. That looks amazing. Sure. Tyron Woodley dominates him for 5 rounds. Come on, we know what Tyron Woodley's game is. He's like the Abdul Razak Al Hassan. If he's not able to get you out in those first couple rounds, the guy's just going to concede and he'll always have that burst of energy for the first 30 or 45 seconds of the round, listening to his coaches and saying, the coaches are yelling at him. Dean Thomas and all these guys are yelling at him like, dude, you got to move forward. You got to start throwing. You got to get your wrestling game going. He's like, yeah, I got it. And then what happens? He sticks to it for like 30, 45 seconds, and then he's just backing up. backing up, waiting to unload that bomb. And he telegraphs it so much that Gilbert Burns is able to get out of the way of it and then land his own good shots and get some good things going for himself too. Now, I'm not trying to completely discredit Gilbert Burns. The guy's made improvements. It's obvious. Came into the UFC mainly as a jiu-jitsu guy. Henry Hooft has really rounded out his striking game, and it's definitely showing in his last 2 fights. But again, those guys are not the level of Kamaru Usman. This is a completely different beast that he's going up against. I'm okay with the fact that people are taking the shot at Burns at that plus 235 range, but I think that this is one of those spots where it's just like the favorite might actually be, deserving of this high price tag. Personally, I'd even put Kamaru Usman up at like minus 400, as I truly think that he goes out there and has a quintessential Kamaru Usman type performance. Like, people are blinded by his Colby Covington fight, like, oh, he's an exciting fighter now. No. He can still go out there and have those Jorge Masvidal type performance where he's just pushing you up against the cage, foot stomping you, taking you down, getting you back up, and just rinse and repeat, just overpowering you. And I think that's what he's going to be able to do here against Gilbert Burns. Now, the only thing that kind of gives me pause about Kamaru Usman is that narrative out there that his knees are just completely shot, right? The guy has no cartilage left between his knees, and he doesn't even do any road work because it's just too bad for his knees. But I truly feel like the way that he's compensating for it by training in other aspects will allow for him to make up for it and still perform at a very high level. You're just going out there for 25 minutes. Check a couple leg kicks, hopefully, and keep the fight in a range where Gilbert Burns is not dangerous. Which is the mainly the striking range. I think we'll see Kamaru push him up against the cage, get some time out there, really start to wear on Burns, and then look to get this fight down later in the fight, because you don't want it nice and early when Gilbert Burns is dry and has all of his energy and can get his jiu-jitsu black belt going to a high level. But I think we know that Kamaru has seen that in the sparring room. We know what he thinks Gilbert Burns' trick moves are, or what his little tricks up his sleeve that he has is, right? So I think Usman has him almost beat everywhere. I think that a knockout of Gilbert Burns is a possibility. I'd give him the slight advantage on the feet in terms of power and technique at this point in time, but it is an ever-evolving game for Kamaru Usman, especially given the fact that he's now with Trevor Whitman as well too. So the spot that I'm chasing is the Kamaru Usman decision, plus 100, even money line there. You're pretty much betting up Kamaru Usman at that line there. My one concern also with that decision prop is I have some questions about Gilbert Burns' cardio as well too. We saw him start to gas a little bit late in the Alexei Kuchenko fight, but I will cut him a little bit of slack considering he only came in on 10 days notice for that fight. His first fight at 170 pounds as well too. He's definitely gotten comfortable at this weight class, but he's never dealt with the pace and pressure of a guy like Usman in live action, in an actual fight. And that's where my question comes with, will Burns be able to handle them for 25 minutes? I'm not 100% sure, but I do feel much better with the decision prop here than actually Kamaru inside the distance. So I'll go Kamaru inside the distance, plus 100. One of my favorite plays on a very iffy card, in my opinion, and where we have high favorites like Belal Muhammad and Rodolfo Vieira. I think that Kamaru Usman is one of the more safer guys when you're talking about, even in DraftKings as well, in that 9,000 range. I think he's one of the safer guys out there, and I think we see him go out there and win a decision. Are you with me?
I'm completely with you. I think Kamaru Usman is, let's sit down and we're going to go to build a bear, only it's a build a fighter, right? We're going to build a perfect fighter here. So we need a guy that's got cardio for sure. That's the most important thing you can have in MMA. We need a guy that has cardio. Okay, Kamaru Usman, he checks the box. He's got, I want cardio like Kamaru Usman for my bear. This guy goes for 25 minutes all day. You've seen him fight at 30% and still dominate a man pillar to post as the 30% Kamaru Usman. The guy's got cardio for days. Okay, I love it. Okay, well, we need a guy that can wrestle. Okay, look no further. This guy's a former, he's a former champion in college. He didn't wrestle D1. He's not a D1 All-American. He's not a national champion, but he's like one of these junior college guys, one of these D2 guys. And wrestling is the kind of sport that the best D2 guy can hang with some of the best D1 guys. It's just a sport that you don't always end up at a D1 school. Regardless, his wrestling top-notch. You look at it, how his wrestling translates to MMA. Yeah, top notch. Look at a D1 guy like Colby Covington. Is he going out there and taking him down? No. His wrestling's top notch. If I'm building a bear, I'm building a fighter. I want wrestling like Kamaru Usman. Striking. Well, geez, Kamaru Usman can't strike. First of all, the guy's got a freakishly long reach. Okay, he's got nice, crisp, technical hands. His ring IQ is just so good that he doesn't have to stay and strike with these guys. Why did he stand and strike with Colby Covington? Well, two reasons, right? Reason number one, he hated Colby Covington. He had a serious chip on his shoulder. This guy's talked a lot of shit. I don't want to just go out there and win a decision. I could probably go out there and try to grind him the way I grind other guys. I want to hurt this man. I want to break this man's jaw. I want to finish this guy. So you see him fight just like a complete different animal. But the other thing was he couldn't do to Colby Covington what he had done to other guys, and that's press him up against the cage and take them down. Colby Covington's takedown defense was too good. His pressure was too good. His cardio was really good as well. So he had to fight a completely different game than he's used to, than he wants to, and he still thrives. Well, what about his chin? Well, Colby hit him. Colby's not the biggest power puncher going, but Colby hit him with some tremendous hot heat, and this guy just shakes it off. In the 5th round of that fight, he's laughing at Colby. He's broken Colby. Colby's the cardio king, and he's toppling over, and I backed Colby in that fight. And Kamaru really showing you that outside of George St. Pierre, there is not another welterweight that's fought in the UFC. There's not another welterweight that's fought on the planet that has got the absolute full package skill set that Kamaru Usman has. And as I mentioned, on top of all that, he has the ring IQ. So I'm building my fighter. I've got, if I had cardio like Kamaru Usman, wrestling like Kamaru Usman, ring IQ like Kamaru Usman, a chin like Kamaru Usman. And, you know, the one thing that's failed him in his career was, oh man, what about that time, you know, he got submitted on the regional scene in Florida, rear naked choke, gave his back. Well, you know what? He's so smart. He's so intelligent. He went and linked up with guys like Gilbert Burns to show him a thing or two about stopping submissions. And now all of a sudden, it's like he has it all. Now, people will say, how can you say he's a nearly perfect fighter? He's a boring decision machine. You guys all said the same thing about GSP. Why is GSP not going out and finishing Jake Shields or Josh Koscheck or Dan Hardy? It's because he's so smart and he's such a level above these guys. He doesn't need to. He can just go and dominate them. And to a lesser extent, Khabib's finishing guys recently. But people all knocked on him about how boring he is because he would go in and he would dominate guys. That's what you're getting in Kamaru Usman. The only real knock that I can think of is he's 33. And like you said, he's getting some injuries that are starting to mount up on him. But he's a 4-1 favorite in any world that you could possibly live in, apparently outside of this one, where you can get him at minus 280. It just seems crazy. So I think he wins this fight. I think he goes out there. I think he does exactly what he did against, say, George Masvidal, or the exact same thing he did against any other, the Tyron Woodley fight. He can just out-grapple you up against the cage, peel you to the ground. Now, people will scream, you can't do that against Gilbert Burns. His jiu-jitsu is so good. You can't. No. Gilbert Burns, there was a time where his jiu-jitsu was second to none. But if you want to be an MMA fighter, you can't just be a jiu-jitsu guy. You need all the skills. And that's one thing Burns has done exceptionally well. He's added all the other skills. He's become a great striker. He spent a lot of time with Henry Hoof and what was the Blackzilians. And then eventually, it's now Stanford MMA. What was the one in between? Hard Knocks 365? Hard Knocks 365. It's like he's followed Henry Hoof around this entire time, and he spent a lot of time working on his striking. But as he works on his striking, the ground game is taking a back seat. And when was the last time he's gone out there and submitted a guy and just like a spectacular fashion? Oh man, look at this grappling. It's on full display. It's like, oh yeah, that's right. You know, he's actually mostly just beating these guys by decision now. So he looked like a world beater against Tyron Woodley. No, he didn't. Everybody looks like a world beater against Tyron Woodley. We were all on Burns by decision. It was a nice plus money price tag. Woodley's done, right? The fight with Damian Maia, it's a 4-year-old fighter. You caught with a punch because, again, you've been working on your striking. You've seen him compete in some grappling matches, right? He couldn't finish Kazushi Sakuraba last year. 47-year-old Kazushi Sakuraba. You couldn't finish him. Okay, that's fine. You know, Tommy Langacker is a total G. Couldn't finish him. Gunnar Nelson, well, he knows BJJ. Couldn't finish him. Alexei Kunchenko, oh yeah, well, he tired in that fight and couldn't finish him. All right, he beat Mike Davis 2 years ago. On
short notice.
Mike Davis took the fight on a week's notice. He's a primary kickboxer. He's like a 6-1 underdog, right? He submitted him. Right? That's the only submission win that he's had in the UFC in 5 years. That's the only submission win he's had in the UFC in 5 years. Okay, so you take this guy who's not submitting anybody at the UFC level, right? Well, that his godly jiu-jitsu, which again is not yielding submission results. This guy's going to submit Kamaru Usman? No, fat chance. And what's even more of a fat chance is that Kamaru Usman's had the 200 rounds with him. And so this goes back to Ryan Hall, right? Ryan Hall's jiu-jitsu is phenomenal, right? He invented the 50-50 guard. He loves to take the back. Once he takes your back, he'll just backpack you. Doesn't have to move from there. He loves to switch for the leg. He's a very, very tricky, unorthodox grappler. He runs right through the Ultimate Fighter, wins the Ultimate Fighter, and now nobody wants to fight him in the UFC because they're like, I just can't really solve the puzzle, and it does nothing for me to try to fight this guy. I don't want. Uriah Faber, right? Uriah Faber is his coach on the Ultimate Fighter, and then brings him to Team Alpha Male to kind of teach some jiu-jitsu for a little bit. He puts it best himself. He goes, the first 5 times I rolled with Ryan Hall, I was like, holy shit. And then every time after that, it was just like, oh, I know what's coming. I know the setup. The more you work with a high-level grappler, the more he's going to show you, this is my move. This is my go-to. Then you're going to talk to him and your friends and, well, how do you defend your go-to? Well, this is what you would do. This is how you get out of the guillotine choke. Guys will try to set it up like this, or they'll try to set up like this, or they'll try to set up like this. And this is what you do to all three of them. Guy throws up an armbar, this is what you're going to do. You roll with this guy day in and day night. So you start to get a beat on what he's going to do. Okay, that guy who submitted one guy in the last 5 years in the UFC, that guy who you know all of his moves, his only path to victory is snatching up the submission. And I just think it's such a small likelihood. So what this comes down to is Kamaru wins, but does Kamaru finish him at some point because Burns gets tired? Burns notoriously has bad cardio, right? Didn't rear its ugly head against Tyron Woodley because Tyron and I trying to do nothing. But if you push a pace on him, it will fall apart. Usman could finish him. But the X factor here is that they are friends. And if I knew for certain Gilbert Burns owed Kamaru Usman $20, I'm taking Usman inside the distance. But because they've gone on record being like, our daughters play together, and Kamaru's the champ. He left his own gym. When have you ever seen champ challenger, same gym, the champ leaves? My take on that, greasy theory, my take on that is Kamaru's a 3-1 favorite. Kamaru's wrestled this guy a million times. Kamaru's sparred with this guy a million times. Kamaru's grappled this guy. Kamaru knows he's going to win. The coaching staff's going to win. The training partners know he's going to win. So if you stay at the gym, right, it gives you no real benefit. You're still going to win. And it alienates Gilbert Burns, who's a friend to everybody here. He's followed us from Black Zillions to Hard Knocks 365. He's a part of the team, man. He's a part of the family. If we alienate him and say, you go somewhere else, he may not come back. He may feel like my team chose Usman. Whereas if Usman goes to Denver for a camp and everybody around Burns, oh yeah, Gil, you got this, go out there, do your thing, and you lose, you still come back to the gym. Everyone pats you on the back. Kamaru comes back. You squash the beef. It's over. They don't even want to alienate him. So they let him train there. And ultimately, it's a decision loss incoming for Gilbert Burns. It's MMA. Anything can happen. Punch could land, kick could land, submission could land, all that stuff. But we got to analyze what's the most likely outcome in a one singular fight, one-off. We're not fighting 100 times. We're not simulating 1,000 times. What's the most likely outcome in a one-off? The most likely outcome is Kamaru Usman by unanimous decision.
I'm right there with you. And this is giving me shades of like when GSP was going up against a new challenger, everybody's trying to make their case that this guy's going to go out there and dethrone this guy. And, Usman is on his way to get to GSP status if he continues to win all these fights. And that's hard for me to say as a Canadian. Yeah, I mean, you want to say that GSP is the GOAT, but like Usman is putting together a very solid resume at this point in time and arguably against tougher competition than what GSP had to go up against in the past. But I truly think that this is a solid spot for Usman. All right. The next segment as always, is going to be our three best bets from each of us. If you guys haven't already, make sure you guys hit the like below as well. That truly helps us out. So let's round this thing up with our three best prop bets. Let me get this screen up for you guys. And bang. All right. So I'll start things off. And I don't like being that guy that uses the same prop as Cody, but we've pretty much banged on it in this last breakdown. I got Usman via decision plus 100. I think that's a solid spot. You guys know me. I like those juicy parlays that try to pay back 5 times, 6 times your money. But this one seems like a very safe one that he should go out there and handedly control Burns and then win this fight via decision. Next up, I got Miranda Maverick via TKO at plus 415. I think she's just going to overpower Julian Robertson in those situations, or even if this fight stays on the ground, I think her striking is so nasty that she's going to put a hurting on Julian Robertson and then get her out of there within the first 2 rounds or so. But I do like that plus 415 on Maverick. In terms of an official play, I only bet the under 2.5, which is plus 150, but I will definitely be sprinkling a little bit of money here on Maverick via TKO. And lastly, I got Polyana Viena via submission plus 390, and another fight where I took the under 2.5 at plus 190. The spot that I think is going to come to fruition is Viena via sub plus 390. I like that spot there, especially if Cody thinks that Mallory's going to take this fight to the ground. That's where I think that Viena will start to thrive. Maybe pull off a reversal, maybe pull off a submission, but that plus 390 is a very solid spot in my eyes. Plus 190 on the under 2.5 covers both outcomes as well too. So I think that's a solid spot. Cody, let them know what you're working with.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of the spots, and I definitely agree with Usman by decision, plus 100. I think we're on the same page here. He's got a lot of back class. He's shown this is the way he gets it done. When he fights at his best, he just slows down the pace, and banks rounds. People are saying he might be a completely reinvented version because he's with Trevor Whitman. Trevor Whitman's an excellent coach. What can Henry Hoof not teach you in the striking realm that Trevor Whitman's all of a sudden going to teach you in an 8-week period of time? So striking should be pretty much the same. You like to see him wear on these guys. And the same thing he did with George Masvidal. Once he feels a little bit of that heat, that little bit of that pressure, I'll just revert back to what I do best. And against Burns, a natural 55 or coming up to 170, Yeah. In what world does Kamaru Usman lose a fight to Dan Hooker, right? Never. No world exists, right? A former 45er being Kamaru Usman, never going to happen. Whereas like Gilbert Burns, a left 55, came up to 170, has fought in some lower level guys. Usman's size should really appear here, and I think he uses that size to cruise out that decision. We're on the same page there. Moving on, we got to get a couple plus money ones hopefully in here. We got Kelvin Gastelum. Oh, did I say plus money? We're going to go with the plus 105. Kelvin Gastelum seems at 270. He's one of the bigger favorites on the card. He seems like one of these guys that if you trust that he is motivated, he's got all the skills to get the win. I think he's going to be able to use all those skills to get the win, and I do see him getting it done by decision. I don't think he submits Ian Heinisch. As far as knocking out Heinisch goes, that would be a task in itself. So give me just a 3-round fight. It's not one of those lengthy, drawn-out 5-round fights that Kelvin Gastelum has been getting ready for. In a nice, clean 3-rounder, hopefully he just wins at least 2 of those 3 rounds and gets a decision, plus 105. And then what do we got? We got a plus 100 and a plus 105. It's like, give me some meat on the bone. Barber by decision, plus 300. Guys, listen, first and foremost, just because it's listed, it's not like, man, I'm going to put a 1-unit play on all 3 of these. It's like, no, it's plus 300. We're going to put a little bit less on it for sure. It's that looking at the card, a lot of it was not big price tags, right? A lot of it, the only other thing I liked was that Rodolfo Vieira 2nd round plus 450. But banking on a 2nd round prop, it was just a little bit risky. The Barber by decision, if she is going to win, it's a dogger pass type fight, close fight. I can see her winning. I can see her losing. But if she does going to win this one, I think that the chance is there for decision. The plus 300, it just looked good enough to me that I'm taking that shot. I know I'm probably going to take some flack on betting Maycee Barber, let alone taking Maycee Barber by decision as one of the props of the week. But bear with me on this, right? We've built you up a nice little bankroll, right? Michael Chandler by knockout, that helped get things going. And then obviously last week we hit Procopio by decision, follow that up with Beneil Dariush by decision, plus 300. If we take a little shot on the dark and we lose it, it's not the end of the world. But I got a feeling that Barber gets this job done and she gets the job done by decision. We are keeping the good times going. And so for a 3-to-1 price tag, let's get a little greasy on this one. Sign me up.
I think they're solid props, all angles here. Again, as I said, starting off the podcast here, I felt like there wasn't as much meat on the bone, so we really got to dig for these props and find the solid spots on both sides. I think we did some good things. Yeah, I mean, Usman via decision seems to be the glaring one that a lot of people are on. Even Bobby Green via decision at minus 125. I see a lot of people on that one too. And then obviously Belal Muhammad around minus 130 to win via decision, another spot as well too. So hopefully next week we can provide you guys those plus 800s, plus 900s. But no bueno this time around, at least on my end. I know Cody's a little bit safer when he's talking about his props. I like to get a little bit more crazy. So I did my best for you guys. I did my best. I promise. All right. That's pretty much it for us. You guys can catch us tomorrow on the Final Weigh-In show, where it's going to be me, Cody, Bleed, and MMA Prediction Guru. He will be back. We can finally ask him how it feels to be 23 or 24 hour of old he is now. Looking forward to having him back on the crew. And then on fight day as well, after the fight's wrapped up, Al Mac and Bleed do a post-fight show. Make sure you guys check that out as well. And then we'll be back next week as well for our Thursday Propping You Up show, 8 p.m. Eastern. Cody, anything you want to say on the way out?
Yeah, Guru is apparently 23, but keep in mind he's a guru. So chances are he's probably a 473-year-old wizard or something like that. And that's why he is wise beyond his age. And yeah, can't wait to link up with him and yourself as well as Bleed tomorrow. And the ones that we're kind of 50-50 on. I like some decisions. You like some inside the distance props. We'll see where their head's at. But yeah, again, we've had another really good outcome. Great guys in the comment section. Every week it seems like somebody pops in the comment section, talk some shit. And what I really like is like it seems like we got a team now. It seems like we got a little family building up here. We got a lot of regulars, we got a lot of smart people, we let it get a lot of good discussion in between the chat, but we got a lot of guys that are like looking at the show as protective, like, hey man, don't come in here and talk that shit. And honestly, I really appreciate it. I respect that you guys go out of your way to come in every Thursday, listen to the show. But I also really respect the fact that you guys got our backs. So it means a lot to me. It means a lot to Lockhamshire. And yeah, if you want to join tomorrow and talk some fights with the rest of the gang, I would love to see you there.
Yep, 9 p.m. Eastern is when we do the Final Weigh-In show. So make sure you guys join us tomorrow. I love this odds crew, love this odds family. Cody, I love you too. I'm spreading the love all around. So again, make sure you guys hit like, subscribe below as well too. And we'll see you guys tomorrow for the Final Weigh-In show at 9 p.m. Eastern time. See you guys then.